Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. Today is an open Q&A, so we are going to be going all over the place with this. As always, I've got some questions from my patrons. I will pick up as much as I can from the chat as we are going through, but this is mostly a Song of Ice and Fire. There will be a few questions about The Lord of the Rings, but I'm open to most things today. So um, let's just get straight into it. First of all, let's go to a question from Rabbi Mitra saying, "Salutations, Robert and Dan the dog. I hope you're doing well and excited to see the new front line of Cunha, Sesko, and Bumo." That's a bit of football chat. Yes, I'm excited. New football season starts this weekend. I saw this excellent topic on the channel Michael Talks About Stuff and wanted to ask your opinion. Well, first of all, Michael Talks About Stuff is a Song of Ice and Fire channel. I've watched a couple of videos. Good stuff. Like it, don't always agree, but I like it when I don't agree with everything that somebody comes out with. That means that there's some new thinking going on. So please do go and check out Michael Talks About Stuff. Wanted to ask your opinion. Could Brandon Snow have been onto something when he wanted to kill this is Aegon the Conqueror's three dragons with weirwood arrows instead of negotiating with him? Can weirwood arms or artillery work against beings made out of fire magic? The points used in the video are: we see dragon glass and Valyrian steel work on beings made of ice magic. These are artillery made from fire magic, working instantly against beings made of ice magic. Why is Bran being made to see a vision of Brandon Snow carving arrows in the Winterfell Godswood during his series of weirwood visions? Could this be one of many things that the North should have remembered? The meta meaning of A Song of Ice and Fire does imply that some items of fire or ice can kill beings from ice or fire, respectively. Okay, so really interesting question. And I will admit I've not seen that video, so it may well be that there are points that I've missed from that. For those who missed the vision that Bran had, he had the weirwood paste and he sort of plugged himself into the weirwood network. This is the last we see from Bran, incidentally, the last bit of Bran POV that we have. And he sort of sees through the weirwood network, in particular through the Winterfell weirwood tree. And he just goes back through time. We have flashes of images. We've had his father, then we get what looks like his uncle and his aunt playing in the weirwood tree. We think we can see what looks like probably old Nan there, several decades before, with Sir Duncan the Tall, and he goes all the way back to what looks like it's the um, perhaps even the founding of Winterfell, where someone who maybe even is called Brandon, the writing's deliberately quite uncertain, is sacrificed in front of the weirwood tree. But we also get, as a part of that, and just to give us a sense of time, all through this, we get told the weirwood tree is shrinking, it's getting smaller. We're going back through time. And one of the things we see here is a dark-eyed youth, pale and fierce, slicing three branches off the weirwood and shaping them into arrows. Now, with a little bit of wider context, what we know is that this is Brandon Snow, who is the bastard brother of Torrhen Stark, who was the Lord of Winterfell, King of Winter at the time, when we get Aegon's invasion. And the high-level story there is that Aegon invaded, kingdoms fall, and the Starks head south. How are they going to deal with this? They know from what they've heard that the Targaryens want to conquer everywhere in Westeros. And Brandon Snow decides that the best way to do this is by trying to shoot at the dragons with weirwood arrows. So here we have this vision. It's not just a random weirwood. He's taking it from the weirwood tree in Winterfell. And his idea, let's get three arrows made from weirwood and I'll shoot at the dragons and that will kill them. However, Torrhen decides not to go down that route. He sees what the dragons are capable of, and he basically says, no, I'll cut a deal. Now, there's a whole other potential set of issues here. He was talking to Aegon the Conqueror. Did they discuss issues to do with the Song of Ice and Fire? The others, that's all potentially there. But the ultimate point is that they didn't get to use those weirwood arrows. Where did Brandon Snow get this idea that weirwood arrows might be able to kill dragons? We don't know. I think I like this idea. I should probably start by saying this. I do like this idea, and I would have been fascinated to see what happened if he tried it. What I would say to this idea that dragonglass and Valyrian steel working on beings made of ice is fire against ice, I personally suspect that dragonglass is talked of as frozen fire, so is ice and fire, and Valyrian steel. It's too much to go into all of the detail for exactly why I think this, but I think that that probably has a little bit of dragonglass in it too. So we're not talking about fire being able to kill ice, ice being able to kill fire. I think that is a little bit too much of a simplification of this. But the idea that weirwood arrows might be able to do extra damage, it does kind of work for me, and I would love to see where that goes. I had a question through on the chat while I was talking about that. This is from Eric Edelfelt saying, did Oberyn throw the trial by combat? He already poisoned Tywin and poisoned Gregor, so losing meant Gregor died slowly over days, and Tywin's last heir was killed. Ultimate Martell revenge. Oh, interesting. So, yes, so this is the trial by combat. Oberyn Martell, the Red Viper, goes and takes on the mountain on behalf of Tyrion. Did he throw it? I think the answer is no. I would agree with you that he poisoned. I did a video on this if you're interested. He poisoned Tywin Lannister. Tywin was going to die at some point. The other person that he really wanted to kill was the mountain, and this was his chance. But he didn't just want to kill him, he wanted him to admit what he'd done. And that was the problem. So, if you read the combat, he strikes him down, and then he paces around him with his spear, trying to make him say the words that he wants to say. If he just walked away, that would have been mission accomplished. He would be dead. The mountain would be gone. But he wanted more than that. So he didn't throw it. He didn't. He wanted to live, as far as we can tell. What he wanted, though, was for the mountain to admit his guilt. And that was the thing. He got too close, and the mountain, with a last burst of energy, managed to grab him and kill him. So it wasn't him throwing it. This was him being overconfident, thinking he'd already won and wanting to get the absolute 100% out of that situation that he possibly could. Good question, though. I liked that one. Hermione, I often fall asleep during the live streams, but did I hallucinate mentions of a Discord server? Okay, so two things. Falling asleep during the live streams, if that's what you do, and I've decided to lean into it, do go and check out In Deep Sleep. There's a link somewhere down, maybe in the description, which is, and I'm trying different ways of doing this, but these live streams, the audio, but with some white noise in the background, crackling log fire, maybe a bit of rain or snow or something like that. I'm trying different formats. Let's see what works. If that works for you, great. The idea is that you get the live stream, I finish talking, and then the background carries on for the rest of the night. No adverts at all to interrupt that. So that's what that's all about. In terms of the Discord, yeah, I mean, I feel a little bit bad about this. I keep on meaning to set up a Discord. This is, I have to admit, something that I have wanted to do for a long time. I haven't yet done, and somebody has very kindly set one up for me, but I've not put the extra effort into getting it sorted properly. So apologies. I will at some point. I'm going to go for October. Should be a time when I have a little bit more time to do stuff. So hopefully I will be able to get something set up where people can just chat between live streams. And another question from Richard Johnson saying, watching your Who is the Valonqar video got me thinking, who is the younger, more beautiful queen in Maggie's prophecy? You're just sending a bit of love to In Deep Sleep, The Well Told Tale, and to Mods, and to Dan the Dog. Well, Dan the Dog has gone to sleep, so I will send your best wishes on to him when he wakes up. But moderators, yeah, let's do an early shout out to the moderators. Moderators here do a fantastic job. Please, if you are there live in the chat, do send them a little bit of love. So who is the younger, more beautiful person who will overthrow Cersei? So this is the Maggie the Frog prophecy. There's a lot in there, and she focuses in a lot on who is the Valonqar, who is the person who's going to kill her. And she decides this is Tyrion. But the other thing that she focuses in on is this younger, more beautiful person who will take away everything she holds dear. And she it sort of decides, not with as much strength as she does with the idea that Tyrion is the Valonqar, but sort of decides that this must be Marjorie, who is undeniably younger and possibly more beautiful. Cersei is recognized as being very beautiful, but she is now starting to age, and she is feeling it. Let's put it that way. In her chapters, the more I read them, the more appreciation I have for the Cersei POV chapters, because they work on two levels all the time. What it is that Cersei thinks and what is actually really going on. So her dresses is one of the classic examples. She starts to becoming convinced that her dressmakers are out to get her because they're making her dresses tighter. They're trying to hurt her. In reality, she's probably just putting on a bit of weight. She's probably just getting a little bit older. And so now, probably Marjorie, most people would say, is the younger, more beautiful person. And Cersei, at some level, certainly recognizes this. And George R. Martin always focuses more in on how do people react to prophecy over what is the truth of the prophecy itself. So the fact that Cersei believes that Marjorie is this person is actually more important than who that person actually might be. So she will almost certainly, in the Winds of Winter, she's already started in quite a big way, but almost certainly in the Winds of Winter, push on even further and try to take down Marjorie. But is Cersei right? There are two or perhaps three other options that fans have generally come up with. One is Sansa, who is definitely younger. She is definitely seen as beautiful, and although she might not be about to take away everything that Cersei holds dear, then she certainly is probably on track to gaining quite a lot of power in the north. Second, we have Daenerys, who is again definitely younger. She is again definitely beautiful, and may well take the throne from, if not Cersei, then Cersei's successor. So those are the two sort of obvious answers. The one, though, that a lot of fans do wonder about is whether this is actually talking about Brienne. And Brienne is younger, but is noted to be not beautiful. But not beautiful physically, but in her personality, in her spirit, in her soul. There's probably few more beautiful characters in Song of Ice and Fire. George R. R. Martin writes a lot of very complex to grey or even dark characters. Brienne is one of the characters who is genuinely a good person. And so she is mockingly sometimes called Brienne the Beauty. Is this what this is talking about? There's a chance that she might, depending on how you call it, sort of think of it, take Jaime from her, which is one of the things that Cersei would count as being closest and dearest to her heart. So I think this is one of those things where there's a number of levels to it, and we can probably interpret it in a number of different ways. What matters more, though, is how Cersei interprets it. And we've got Eric Edelfelt saying, thanks for answering, and thanks for the channel. Well, thank you very much. I hugely appreciate that. Let's go to Chitara saying, or Ugly Duckling. I think this is talking about Brienne, if we go down the fairy tale route. Yeah, absolutely. Let's go to a question from Taylor Jones. Say hello, Robert. My personal favourite house is the relatively inconsequential House Redfort. Lord Horton Redfort is one of the Lords Declarant. He is also one of the three that Peter Littlefinger predicts may die within the next year. He implies Lord Redfort and Lady Waynwood may be dead from old age, and Lord Hunter may be murdered by his brother within the year. It's been a while since my last reread, but Littlefinger doesn't seem like he would leave so much up to chance here. Do you think the implication is that he is going to be actively setting up the deaths of these lords? And a small but far more important follow-up, do you have a favourite relatively inconsequential house? If so, why that specific house? Well, okay, let's deal with the Lord's Declarant first. So the Lord's Declarant, for those who don't know, this is they did sort of cover it on the TV show, but not in any great depth. These are 6 powerful houses within the Vale who oppose Littlefinger's power grab. Now, when we say power grab, from their perspective, they had Jon Arryn, who was their lord. Everybody respected Jon Arryn. Nobody doubted he was the lord. And Jon Arryn had a son with his wife Lysa. Jon Arryn died, suspicious circumstances. And then Lysa marries Littlefinger, and then Lysa dies. And Littlefinger suddenly says, I'm now Lord Protector. Sweet Robin, too young, I'm now ruling. It all seems very convenient for him. Now, nobody can really pin this on him, but everybody knows what Littlefinger's like. And so 6 noble houses come to him quite quickly and say, we just need to know what's going on. We're not convinced. And he manages to deflect them quite cleverly in their initial approach. But then, and he buys himself a year, basically. He says, look, give me a year and then we'll discuss this again. And they kind of accept this. And afterwards, he's talking to Sansa and he says, yeah, but so in this year, there's a good chance 2 of these, they're getting a bit old. They'll probably die. One of them, his brothers don't really like him. He'll probably go. And there are 2 more who the clear implication is that he's buying off. And then the final one, Lord Royce, probably can't be bought off. No one would really believe that he died of old age. But Littlefinger's sort of the opinion, if it's just him, then that's fine. And probably, as his plan appears to be, when Sansa reveals herself as a Stark, the Royces who have connections with the North, let's not forget who's the very first sort of main character that we see, Waymar Royce, goes to the wall, the Royces still have respect for the old ways, for the North. The probably the Royces will fall in behind them then. So that's very high level. That's Littlefinger's plan. Do I think that he would just leave it to chance that those other Lords Declarant will die? No, absolutely not. This is him working behind the scenes. He's being very manipulative. That's him persuading others to subtly murder them. As for the second part of your question, do I have a sort of a favourite inconsequential house? I mean, I don't know. It depends what you count as inconsequential. I mean, I think the people of Westeros would consider House Reed to be inconsequential. They hardly ever appear anywhere. I love House Reed, Howland Reed, obviously. But for the plot, I suspect most of us probably wouldn't say that they're inconsequential. So I'm probably left with someone like House Caswell. You may remember House Caswell or Lord Caswell from House of the Dragon. I think they portrayed him quite well. He was a Rhaenyra loyalist who, when Rhaenyra decamped over to Dragonstone, he stayed in King's Landing and refused to bend the knee to the new king, Aegon II. And he was, I think, beheaded for it, possibly hanged. I kind of like him and House Caswell as a whole. They kind of stood by what they thought was right all the way through this. They've never got big, they've never got impressive, but they've always just been there standing by their principles. So, yeah, I would probably pick that. Wolf Dan. In an early Davos chapter in A Clash of Kings, Salador Saan tells of the forging of Lightbringer, in which he says he returned to the temple. Which temple? Well, I don't have the exact text in front of me. I think that this is referring to Lightbringer, actually, context, is obviously the sword of Azor Ahai. And Melisandre has said that the sword that Stannis has, which glows bright and red, is Lightbringer. And those who know the legends are not convinced, because Lightbringer is supposed to be burning hot, and that is not. And Salador Saan tells the story, which we all know, about him tempering the sword first in water, that didn't work, then in a lion, that didn't work, then in Nisa Nisa, and that did work. But we're told that this happens in a temple. Now, which temple? Given that Azor Ahai is a legend that is basically being kept and held on to by the priests of the Red God, R'hllor, I think probably over time it has turned into that. That's my gut instinct. This is a R'hllor thing. Whether it was originally, I don't know. George R. R. Martin is very clear in telling us that we shouldn't focus too much on the details of legends. Legends that come from the Age of Heroes or before, it's the same as our legends. There's definitely truth there. Let's not pretend there's no truth. There is truth there. But the details of exactly what happened and when and why and what was going on, that level is changeable. So if I had to guess, this is a detail added in by the faith of R'hllor at some point in the passing down of this story. And Roman Lakovets, are there any theories that you believed at first but changed your mind on later? Oh dear, that's a tough one. I have to admit, I might have to pass on this one. Sorry, Roman. That's the kind of thing that I'm sure there are. I absolutely 100% am sure that there are, because I tend to try and keep to quite a fluid understanding of this story, which is to say that I don't hold too closely to any of my theories. I tend not to think of them as theories at all. In fact, I tend to think of them as my working hypotheses. This is my best understanding of what's going on. At the moment we get more information, then I might change it. So there are various things that I will definitely have changed my mind on over time. And you probably, if you went back through my old videos, you probably would be able to see some of them. I do. It's not really a theory, but it's a theory that I've come to believe more. Just to pick one random example, because we were talking about it a moment ago. I remember the first time I was told that Aegon the Conqueror may have had a vision of the others, and this was why he came to conquer the Seven Kingdoms. And my thought was, I don't think that works for me. And the reason I didn't think that worked for me at the time was because I looked at what Aegon the Conqueror did after he conquered, and he didn't go north. He did once later on. It took him decades to get all the way up to Winterfell. He didn't inspect the wall. This did not seem to me to be the action of a man who was hugely concerned about the threat of an attack from the north. Since then, we've got more information, and George R. R. Martin has basically confirmed that, yeah, this is the case. Aegon the Conqueror did have some kind of a vision. We don't know the details. Obviously, they played this up a lot in House of the Dragon. We don't know the exact details in the books, but I think we're pretty sure that this is now happening in the books because of what George R. R. Martin said. So I've shifted on that. And I'm now working, and I did a video probably about a year ago where I worked through these issues. How is it then? Why is it that Aegon didn't go north? Having conquered the Seven Kingdoms, if he's so concerned about attack from the north, why didn't he go north? The short answer to that, by the way, is that I think he has to have accepted that the Starks are protecting the north. That's the logical conclusion. So, yeah, I don't know if there's a theory. I can't think of any other theories. That's certainly one, though, that I initially disliked and now do like. And by the way, hat tip to those who, even from very early on, did like that theory. Someone like Joe Magician, by the way. I will happily give it a hat tip to him. Jacob Major saying, can Jaime return as a better fighter after losing his hand? He's honed skills like footwork and coordination, plus fighting Southpaw gives him an edge, as seen with Corran Halfhand. He might also get Oathkeeper back. Okay, so Southpaw means fighting the other way around. Might he emerge as a better fighter than before? I mean, it's possible. My take is that him losing his hand. So this is quite an important thing for someone who built a lot of his self-identity around his ability to fight. And the fact that he's lost the use of his right hand, well, he's lost his right hand, means that he no longer has that. And so he's had to rebuild an understanding of who he is. And George R. R. Martin has used this as a kind of a literary tool to help us work through this idea of Jaime not just rebuilding himself in terms of, am I a fighter or not a fighter, but also who he is vis-a-vis his family, vis-a-vis his past. And this is a sort of a visual reminder of that. Now, as a part of that, what I hope and suspect is that we will get to a position where he actually does, you're right, get to be a competent fighter with his left hand. He has been training with fighting with his left hand. And So his footwork definitely seems to be improving. His stance seems to be improving, but still, he's not naturally a left-handed person. So, is he likely, realistically, to ever get back to it as good as he was before? Personally, I think no. But I think that might well be, again, a kind of a figurative understanding of where he is as a person. He will realize that um, he can't better that bit of himself. So, what does he get good at? Does he redefine himself in some other way? What you find, and his chapters in A Feast for Crows, Dance with Dragons are, I think, fascinating ones in terms of character. What you find is that old Jaime would have immediately thought of fighting. He's given the commission, go to the Riverlands, claim the Riverlands. Some of them are holding out. Robb Stark's been defeated. Uh, the Tullys have been defeated, but there are some castles that are holding out. And then he goes to them, and one after another, he gets the castles, he claims the castles, but not through him fighting anyone, through him being clever, through him negotiating. And that is him becoming a new version of himself. So I think the short answer to your question is I don't think he's going to become better as a left-handed fighter than he was as a right-handed fighter. But I think this is a good thing because his character development has to now not be dependent on him fighting all the time. Constantine Thranos asking, did Miri Mazda really stop the coming of the stallion who mounts the world, or did she unknowingly greenlight Daenerys' path into becoming the one who fulfills the prophecy? Bizarrely, I've literally finished writing a video on almost that exact topic today, so expect that at some point in the next week or two. I think I had another question in the chat. Hang on, here we go. Sam Clunts II saying, good day, and to you too, sir. Why did Rhaegar go from wanting to depose Aerys II to going to war for him, knowing what Aerys II did to the Starks and that Lyanna went willingly? Okay, so he... Aerys... Oh, sorry. Let's start with Rhaegar. Rhaegar was obsessed with prophecy. This drove huge amounts of his actions, and he started out thinking that he was going to be the prince that was promised, Azor Ahai reborn. Then he thought it was going to be his son, and so he thought that the Targaryens had to be ruling in order to fulfill this prophecy. He had to be ruling. He decided that Aerys was not a good ruler, and he should be taking over from his father. But then we got the rebellion. And the rebellion was not just against Aerys II. It was against the entirety of the Targaryen rule. Robert Baratheon declared that he was going to be king. And, I mean, the timings, George R. R. Martin is deliberately quite vague about. But the timings match up that Robert Baratheon says, I want to be king, which is a clarion call to say, I want to get rid of all of the Targaryens. At about the same time that Rhaegar left to go and join the battle. So, at a very high level, Rhaegar was not fighting for his father in the Battle of the Trident. He was fighting for the Targaryen rule of Westeros and lost. So, he didn't switch allegiance. He didn't suddenly decide, actually, you know what, my father's not that bad. In fact, Jaime remembers that he spoke to Rhaegar just before Rhaegar went off to the Battle of the Trident, and Rhaegar said to him, and Jaime wasn't a part of his inner circle, so this was just like a sort of a by the way kind of moment. He said to him, there will be some big changes when I come back. Rhaegar was convinced he was going to survive. There will be big changes when I come back. Which is to say that Rhaegar had not given up his idea of deposing his father. He just postponed it. We need to deal with Robert Baratheon. Robert Baratheon wants to be king himself and kill all of the Targaryens, and that wouldn't be good. So let's deal with him, and then I'll come back and I'll deal with my father. So, yeah, this wasn't a sudden Damascene conversion to supporting his father. This was a protecting the Targaryen rule. Okay, let's go to a question from Zach saying, "Hey Robert, I hope you are doing well." I am, thank you. One thing I've been wondering recently is why Edmure has such a strong reaction when seeing Thomas Sevens at Riverrun. I understand the history between them and how Tom made a song mocking Edmure and why Edmure would dislike Tom. It just feels like an overreaction given the circumstances. Jaime has just threatened basically to give the Tullys of Riverrun the reins of Castamere treatment and launch his baby from a trebuchet. But Edmure has a stronger reaction to seeing Tom than to Jaime's threats. Do you think there is more going on here, or am I just contributing too much importance to that last line of the chapter? Okay, so the last lines of that chapter. So this is Jaime, which I said I really enjoyed these chapters. Jaime's going between places in the Riverlands, reclaiming them or claiming them for the Lannisters. He arrives at Riverrun, and the Freys are there, and they've basically just been besieging it. And you'll probably remember the scene from the TV show. They've got Edmure out, and they threaten to kill him every day, and then they don't. And they bring him out again, and they threaten to kill him again, and they don't. And the Blackfish inside Riverrun is just there going, well, you're not going to do it, so why should I do anything? So Jaime arrives and he sort of marches in to Edmure, and Edmure's in the bath, which is just an amusing side detail. And he says to him, basically, look, I haven't got time to be messing around here. You got two options. You're the Lord of Riverrun. You go in there, tell them that they're giving up, hand over the cost to me. That's your first option. The other option is you decide not to do that. If you decide not to do that, then I will find your baby child and I will put it in a trebuchet and I'll fire it over the walls into Riverrun. And then I will attack Riverrun. But I'm not going to attack with Lannister soldiers. I'm going to get your bannermen, the ones who've surrendered to me. I'm going to send them charging at the wall. They're going to get shot down by your own men. Your bannermen are going to be killed by your other bannermen. And then eventually I will capture Riverrun and I will kill everyone. And he is just like really brutal about this. And he sort of leaves it and he says, okay, you got to make your decision. And he says this is the last few words of that chapter. I'll leave you to enjoy your food. Singer, he turns to Tomo Seven Strings, play for our guest whilst he eats. You know the song, I trust. The one about the rain, says Tomo Seven Strings. I'm a lord, I know it. Edmure seemed to see the man for the first time. No, not him. Get him away from me. Why? It's just a song, said Jaime. He cannot have that bad a voice. So that's where we leave it. And basically, Edmure then accepts that, okay, Jaime's going to do it. The song is The Reigns of Castamere. This is a song about how the Lannisters brutally destroy any opposition. Now, what's Edmure's reaction to Tom? Why does he not like him particularly? Yes, so he's aware of him. He did a song about him before. I think that's it. It's like not. I don't want any music. I don't want to hear that song. I definitely don't want to hear it from that guy. So I think that's all that's going on. Maybe there's another layer to it, but it's not one that I'm 100% sure. Jaime certainly doesn't seem to think so. He's there saying, "Well, it's just a song. He cannot have that bad a voice." So Jaime definitely thinks it's just about the song. And the outcome is Edmure basically agreeing with what Jaime says, which clearly shows that Edmure, however he reacted to Tom O Seven Strings, Edmure understood the threat, and that was the main point of what was going on. Violet Venus saying, "Love your videos and streams." Thank you. They've got me to start reading the books. Oh, well, that made me very happy. Thank you. I've been wondering, we hear a lot about Ned's bones, but what about Robb's? Shouldn't he also be buried in the crypts? Yes, he should. So Robb is killed at the Twins, and then they have their fun with him. They attach his wolf's head to his shoulders, parade him around. His mother, they just throw into the river in this kind of like a travesty of what a Tully burial ceremony is. And Tyrion does wonder, are they going to send the bones? And the clear implication is no. They're not. The whole Red Wedding is let's break every protocol. We don't care about this. We're just going to do the bad thing and win the war and get good position. And so they don't care. House Stark, as far as they're concerned, is gone. There's actually nowhere for them to send. I mean, if you're trying to defend House Frey here, there is who's there for House Stark? House Stark is dead. House Stark is Winterfell has been destroyed. Ned Stark has been killed. Robb Stark has been killed. Bran and Rickon, as far as everyone else is concerned, have been killed. Arya's gone missing. Sansa's gone missing. House Stark is gone. There's actually no one there who would take possession of the bones. So there's nowhere for the Freys to send them, but they almost certainly weren't looking to send them anyway. So yes, Robb Stark's bones should go up to Winterfell, but they won't. Sam Clance II. Currently, we have several undead. And this is Lady Stoneheart and a few others. With dragons enhancing magic, do we know of any possible undead when the dragon numbers were high? Okay, so when dragon numbers were high, were there undead roaming the world? I mean, it's an interesting question. So, for those who don't understand the context of this, we when the dragons came back, then the kind of ambient level of magic in the world seems to have gone up. And what I mean by that is that the pyromancers in King's Landing, they come to Tyrion and say, are there any dragons about now? Because all the bits of magic we're trying seem to be working again, and they haven't since the dragons were around. And then over in Karth, Dany sees this fire mage who does some impressive magic, creating a fire ladder, climbing up it, disappearing. Good tricks. And Quaithe says, before the dragons were born, didn't do any of that. He could just create a little bit of fire here. This is new, and it's because the dragons are here. So the dragons seem to have, and this is my language, not George R. R. Martin's language, seem to have increased the ambient level of magic across Westeros and Essos. Is that therefore connected to there being sort of undead? By which we're talking Beric Dondarrion, Lady Stoneheart, and so on. We don't have reports of it, is the short answer. I mean, there's two bits here that we could possibly be talking about. That when in Westeros there were a lot of dragons, something around the height was just at the start of the Dance of the Dragons. And we know a reasonable amount about the world then, and we don't really get any reports of there being any firewights going on. I mean, there are characters who we're told are older than they look, but no clear implication that those are firewights or anything. And then obviously when we had the Valyrian Freehold, there were lots of dragons around. But that's such a long time ago, we don't really have information from there. So I think the short answer is we're not aware of any, but I think your logic is right, that theoretically there perhaps could have been. We just don't hear of it. Maura Lee saying, just a show of love for you and Dan, your handsome dog. Thank you for the great content. Well, thank you, Maura. I hugely appreciate your support, as always. Thank you very much. And let's go to a question from Lorelei Dragon. Actually, I think I see you there in the chat as well, saying, good evening, Robert and Dan. It seems to me that George R. R. Martin was setting up Sansa and Dany as foils for one another initially, but maybe changed his mind. Or perhaps I'm mixing up books and show. It's been a while. Do you think that's correct? And if so, how do you think those characters will play off each other when they come into contact? Well, I think the answer is yes, this is definitely in the show. They were creating those two characters so that in season 7, 8, there would be an element of conflict between them. That Sansa would be the Lady of Winterfell, and then Dany would come in, and there'd be a little bit of jockeying for position between the two of them. And there is definitely an element of kind of mirroring, not to a huge extent, I have to say, but you can definitely see that both of them, they're similar ages, it has to be said, and they both start off as being quite, innocent is probably the best way of saying it. Pardon me, sorry. Quite innocent and with dreams of another place where life is better, and they could marry someone and all would be good. But over time, over the books, then they've really had to grow up. They've been in some pretty hard situations, and probably they will get their homecoming, as it were, in the next book. So Sansa coming back to Winterfell, and then Dany coming back to Dragonstone or Westeros. So there is a degree of echo to their stories. But I don't think that equates to George R. R. Martin setting them up as kind of rivals in any way, or even foils is the word you use. They may end up that way, but I don't think the paths are going to cross for long enough with enough significance for this to be a huge matter. The next book for Dany is she's going to go into the Dothraki Sea, she's going to come back to Meereen, and then they're going to head off to Westeros. And that, broadly speaking, is what her story is going to be. Sansa, she's going to be in the Vale, and then they're going to head up to Winterfell, and that's broadly what their story. So the next book, they're not going to come into contact. And then the beginning of the last book, although maybe we will have a little bit of story creep, maybe we're going to get another book, who knows. But in A Dream of Spring, then Dany is going to start focusing on the south, almost certainly. And Sansa is going to start focusing on the north. So as and when they come together is actually going to be right at the very end in overall terms of this story. So I don't think setting them up as foils, there may well be some friction, but I don't think that it's going to be a structured thing. And Lorelei clarifying, yeah, they're foils as a literary device. So yeah, there might well be foils when they meet. But yeah, as you say, um, and not really rivals. Let's go with Stephen saying, "Hi, Robert. Does the village of Pennytree have an important role to play in the story? Do we know much about its history? Is it connected to the old gods like other mysterious Riverlands locations? And more importantly, why do they nail pennies to a tree?" Lots of really good questions here. So Pennytree is not a place we see huge amounts of. Jaime visits there right towards the end of his story arc that we've got. And rather unhelpfully, he goes there and he sees this tree with lots of pennies just sort of like nailed onto it. And he goes, "I wonder why they nailed pennies to this tree. Yeah, if I asked this guy who's hanging around, he would know. But yeah, that would get rid of the mystery, wouldn't it?" So it's George R. R. Martin does do this sometimes. He's almost playing with this, and I think the reason is it's not just because he's trying to be annoying; it's because he's trying to hold that back for something else. And I think the something else he's trying to hold it back for is the Tales of Dunk and Egg. So let me explain the history of Pennytree. Pennytree is a small village in between what are known as the Teats, two hills. And this is disputed lands between House Blackwood and House Bracken. Now, House Blackwood and House Bracken have been fighting each other for centuries, millennia. And I'm not going to go into, I did a video recently about that. I'm not going to go into all the detail, but basically there are some small areas that they disagree on who is in charge. And Pennytree is at the heart of that. We get this kind of throwaway line, though, when Jaime is he's talking to the Brackens and also the Blackwoods about what's an appropriate thing for the Blackwoods to be giving the Brackens. In this war, the balance of power between those two houses shifts one way to another all the time. In this war, the Blackwoods have just lost out a bit. The Brackens have now got the upper hand, and Jaime is he's just so world weary at this point, but he just all goes out, "Okay, fine, right, so you need to give them a bit of land, point," and he like gets the map and says, "Point at things that you think need to happen. What is it that has to happen?" And he goes to the other people and says, "Well, what do you think needs to happen? Just you both know what it is." What's the appropriate thing for one person to give another person in this situation? Just do it and we can move on. And so we get this exchange. And Jonas Bracken's mouth was set stubbornly. All these lands belonged, this is Jaime's pointing at stuff on the map. He said, all these lands belonged to Stonehenge once, Stonehenge being House Bracken. The Blackwoods stole them from us. What about this village here, between the Teats? Jaime tapped the map with the gilded knuckle. Pennytree. That was ours once too, but it's been a royal fief for 100 years. Leave that out. We ask only for the land stolen by the Blackwoods. Your Lord Father promised to restore them to us if we would subdue Lord Titus for him. So, in this negotiation, the Brackens are saying, well, we want back these lands that they took from us. The Blackwoods have a different view, obviously, but he says, not that village. Don't worry about that village. They didn't take that one from us. That doesn't belong to us. That actually is a royal fief. It's been a royal fief for 100 years. Now, what is a royal fief? Now, this is a bit of land that owes fealty not to a local lord, but direct to the crown, which is intriguing. And he says that's been the case for 100 years. So what happened 100 years ago? It's not exact, but about 85-ish years ago is when the Tales of Dunk and Egg have got up to. And we know that the plot for Dunk and Egg at a very high level is they've been doing the stuff that they've done. At the end of the Mystery Night, they're probably going to head up to Winterfell. And then after that, they're probably going to head back down to the Riverlands. Now, there's a story George R. R. Martin half wrote called The Village Hero. The village, I suspect, is Pennytree. We know it's in the Riverlands. We know that this is going to be a story about Blackwoods versus Brackens. And there's a link here, a reason perhaps why Dunk might wish to go to Pennytree, because his old mentor, Sir Arlen, was Sir Arlen of Pennytree. So there's a reason for him, and he thinks about this a couple of times. He even thinks about, I don't even know where Pennytree is. And there's a reason why he might want to go there. Therefore, if he suddenly sees it on a map or hears about it, so I want to go there. He's always thinking about Sir Arlen. So we can see a reason why they would go to Pennytree. We can see that George R. R. Martin has a story set in a village in the Riverlands, in a confrontation between the Brackens and the Blackwoods. And we know that at this point, Egg is starting to, he's not just being incognito now, he's starting to acknowledge the fact that he's a Targaryen and start to wield a little bit of his power. So, we don't know the ins and outs of that story, but the timing seems to work. For Dunk and Egg come down there, there's a dispute about this land, which we know is there, and it ends up with Egg saying, this is now a royal fief. Or maybe Bloodraven comes in and says, this village, that's now protected by the king. You can't do anything about this village. You can fight about other stuff, but this village here, that's now protected. Which fits the timescale. So, I'm 90% sold on that being what's going to happen. George R. R. Martin didn't want to tell us about this in the books, in A Song of Ice and Fire, because he wanted the reveal to be in Dunk and Egg. Why the pennies on the tree? I don't know. So this is a pure guess. But what if the deal was for Pennytree? It might not have been called Pennytree at the time. What if the deal was that the people of that village, they didn't owe their taxes to the Brackens. They didn't owe their taxes to the Blackwoods anymore. That's gone. It's a royal fief. But realistically, how much money is that going to provide the crown? Not much. What do they owe? A penny a year, a penny a month, whatever it is. And they say, well, we'll come and collect it. Just hammer it into that tree. And that, just headcanon, that is why it's called Pennytree, because they are independent. They're a royal fief, and that is their tax to the crown. Okay, let's go with Robbie OB. Greetings from sunny Split. Oh, I enjoy that there. Any A Song of Ice and Fire recommendations to check out while I'm here? I mean, I don't know what you count as a recommendation. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but my latest fun thing is the Lands of Ice and Fire, which is just like maps, and more maps. Love a map. It's that's just water, but you get the idea. Amazing maps. That's my recommendation for you. I will talk about that a little bit more in a moment. And Famous Elephant. Any thoughts about HBO's A Night of the Seven Kingdoms show being pushed back until next year, and how they'll deal with the inevitable catching up with the written novellas? Yeah, I mean, I have various thoughts on this. So, in terms of it being pushed back, it has been, for those who don't know, the situation, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, Dunk and Egg, It has been filmed. There were a couple of reshoots, nothing to be worried about as far as I'm aware. George R. R. Martin seems very happy about it. The mood music, I get, is that HBO are very happy with it. So I've not seen anything. You've not seen anything, but so far so good. And I think we were all expecting. There's only 6 episodes. We're told they're only going to be like half an hour per episode. I think we're all expecting any time from now it could appear. But then HBO a while ago said this is going to be winter 2026, by which we assume they mean January, February of next year. So, what does that mean? Do I have any thoughts about that? Well, I'm slightly disappointed that it's not coming sooner, but I get it. Why is it then? I don't know. I mean, the best theory I've seen is that this is coinciding with the launch of HBO Max in a number of countries, including the UK and Germany and a few other big markets. And so if you're just in the UK, because I obviously am also in the UK. This means that you will not, as of January, as far as I understand it, your Now TV or Sky Atlantic or however you currently get those HBO shows, that's not going to work anymore. We'll have to get HBO Max. I think that's the way it works. And the same goes for a few other markets, that all of their deals that they had have all run out and they're now going to their own streaming service. Now, that will inevitably mean that they have to push that streaming service. They have to sell it to people, and they would quite like to do that with a product rather than just say, hey, HBO is great. Remember all those old shows we did ages ago? You like them? Trust us, there's going to be more coming on. They'd much rather say, get HBO Max because A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms is coming. Here's the trailer. So that's the best working theory that I've seen. I think that was the Dragon Demands who came out with that one, which kind of makes sense to me. So what do I think? I'm a little disappointed I don't get it earlier, but I'm a patient man. I'm happy to wait for it. How will they deal with the inevitable catching up with the written novellas? So the latest that we've had is, and I don't know if this has been officially confirmed or whether this is just one of those things that they semi-formally leaked out, which is that it has already been renewed for season 2 and 3. Which sounds like a big commitment, but then you think this is only 6 episodes per season, and they're only half an hour per episode. We're talking an extra 12 half-hour episodes, so it's not a massive extra commitment. And realistically, if they want to do this with particularly the actor for Egg, while they're still a child, then they have to film those things relatively soon, rather than wait to see how season 1 goes and then commission it, and then that might add in just a little bit too much time. So I think that's broadly positive. I'm happy with that. As an aside, George R. R. Martin is going to be at New York Comic Con. I don't know the timing, but I think September, maybe October. And he will be there with the showrunner for A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms and the actors for Dunk and Egg. So I don't know, but I would assume they will want to launch something along those times. So maybe there's going to be a trailer or something happening at that time as well. So keep an eye out for that. How will they deal with them catching up? So if I were George R. R. Martin, which I'm clearly not, then I think the answer would be, that's okay. I will write The Winds of Winter, and then once I've written The Winds of Winter, I'm then going to write a whole load more Dunk and Egg stories, and it will all be fine. I will allow you to insert your own reaction to that, but I think it's pretty clear that George R. R. Martin finds it easier to write Duncan Egg stories for understandable reasons than A Song of Ice and Fire. So, A Song of Ice and Fire is very complex to write. There are so many different plot lines that he has to kind of like weave in together for every single thing. A Duncan Egg, it's a novella. It's a shorter story, and it's largely standalone. So he would be able to write that nice and quick. It would not surprise me if we don't have the Winds of Winter by the time that they finished seasons 1 to 3 of Dunk and Egg, A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, and if they decide they want to carry on with it, it would not surprise me if George R. R. Martin very swiftly finishes off a couple of them. And he can, in as much as the next book, She Wolves of Winterfell, that's not going to be its end title. That was always just a working title. That was half written, and then he kind of got a little bit stuck and went off to do other things. But that novella is already half written. The Village Hero, which we were talking about a moment ago, that he's not written it, but he has plotted it out. He knows what's going to happen in that story. So I don't actually think there's a huge amount of extra effort in writing those next 2, maybe even 3 stories. So how will they cope? I think George R. R. Martin was sufficiently bitten by the way that Game of Thrones overtook the main Song of Ice and Fire story, that he will prioritize writing the Dunk and Egg stories so that doesn't happen again. Okay, let's go to a question. Robbie OB, Tinfoil. When George R. R. Martin passes, they will find finished manuscripts for The Winds of Winter, A Dream of Spring, Blood and Fire, and the rest of the Duncan Egg novellas sitting in his office. Well, I mean, I don't really like thinking about after he's gone. But if the question is, what has he already written? I think The Winds of Winter he's written 85%. A couple of years ago, he'd written 75%. He has been writing it. Everything I hear tells me he is writing it slowly, but he is writing it. So we've got the vast majority of that book there. Dream of Spring, I don't think he has plotted out, but I think he knows where he's going with it. The other Dunk and Egg stories, some of them he has definitely plotted out. We've got at least half a story, as I said, on She Wolves of Winterfell. Blood and Fire, I mean, my personal headcanon is he's further into that than he probably would like to admit. I think he enjoys writing Fire and Blood, and I think he finds it very easy compared to A Song of Ice and Fire, and he has admitted that he's written some of it. So yeah, I think there is some more of that just lurking. Marcus Montgomery, how will the Lannisters pay their debts in The Winds of Winter? Well, I mean, I suppose it depends on what you count as the Lannisters paying their debts. I think Cersei will decide that Kevin was killed by the Tyrells and that the Faith of the Seven are out to get her, and she will do something dramatic. Not exactly the same, I suspect, but like when she blew up the Great Sept in Game of Thrones. Something along those lines to take out all of her enemies at once. I think Tyrion is in an interesting situation because he has literally created House Lannister debts in order to basically buy himself out of slavery and into a sellsword company. He just wrote a whole load of IOUs to the Second Son's leadership team and said, I know I've not got money right now, but when I get back to Casterly Rock, then you can have this. So that, I think, is it feels like a minor plot point, but it will affect what happens when they land, because it's a matter of prioritization. Dany will want to take King's Landing. Tyrion will be there wanting to take Casterly Rock so he can start paying off the debts that he owes. Jaime, I think he's going to start trying to. In the Winds of Winter, his arc is to move past all this, is to move away from the Lannister ideas. Increasingly, you see him just thinking, well, this is what my father would do, but I don't want to do that. He did, in fact, he had probably a good example of this. Is he was talking to forget his surname, yeah, young Blackwood, who comes with him in his travels around the Riverlands, and he they get into a conversation about the raids of Castamere, and also about the Brackens and the Blackwoods. And Jaime basically says, "Well, how hasn't this ended? It's been going on for thousands of years." And the answer is that his father would have just, if he was in charge of one of those houses, he would have just obliterated the other one. And the question is put to him, is that why the Lannisters obliterated House Stark? And he's like, wow, yeah, I guess we did. Although, hang on, Sansa's still alive. And his brain then moves away from thinking this is what his father would want to, actually, I kind of hope she's all right, Sansa. I wonder how Brienne's getting on looking for her. And you can see in that moment his mind shifts away from bragging about how Lannister would always pay their debts and on to actually caring about people. How far that character arc goes is a completely different matter. But in the short term, in the Winds of Winter, Jaime's moving on from that. Okay, I think that's me caught up on questions in the chat. Let's go to I had an anonymous question on Patreon. I think you know who you are. I will answer that advice question over there. Lady Vaughan-Strauss saying, "Greetings, Robert. I hope you're doing well." I am, thank you. I like to think of the Wall as an overblown version of Hadrian's Wall, as many in the current era seem to treat it only as a barrier to the barbarians in the north. Of course, there is no real difference between humans in our world, but are wildlings actually different from the people south of the Wall? Are they largely descended from the first men, or were they there before the first men? If they are exactly the same, what do you believe caused them to be on the wrong side of the Wall? Was it personal prejudice or simply geography? Are there any other correlating earthworks along the lines of Offa's Dyke in Westeros? Okay, so the Wall. Yeah, George R. R. Martin has acknowledged that his inspiration for the Wall was Hadrian's Wall. Now, for those who don't know, Hadrian's Wall is this was a Roman wall built in the time of the Emperor Hadrian across it's the north of England really nowadays, but it was then the sort of the border between England and Scotland, and the more importantly, it was the end of Roman rule. And Georgia and Martin, and if you go there now, I mean, beautiful countryside, it has to be said, but the wall itself is quite low. So don't get your hopes up if you ever go there. It's not like the Great Wall of China. It's you can climb up onto it and walk along it if you wish to. I don't think they encourage you to, but it's not massive. But you can go there and you can understand what George R. Martin says is that he went there, and I've done the same. You stand there, and it's hard not to just get this kind of feeling of this is the end of the world, and beyond, who knows what's there. Civilization is behind me, the wilds are in front of me. Now, anyone historians and Scottish people, I suspect, at this point would probably be jumping up and down and saying, well, no, hang on a moment, that's not entirely fair. It's not entirely fair, but that's the inspiration that George R. R. Martin took from it, which is the sort of the colloquial interpretation of the Wall, is that this was the end of civilization, which is the idea that he took for the Wall in Westeros. Now, the Wall in Westeros obviously is much higher. He says very clearly, I took this as a inspiration, as a concept, and then just made it fantasy. So it's hugely long and it's hugely high. Now, the sort of the question here about the barbarians, are the wildlings actually different? The answer is no. The wildlings, as far as we can tell, are descended from the First Men. So the First Men come across from Essos, they come into the south of Westeros, and they work their way north. At some point, we get the Long Night, the others invading. That ends, and humanity decides, well, we're going to keep them out, and we're going to build this wall here. And some people happen to be living on the other side of that wall. And I'm sure there were conversations at the time. Do you not want to move over here? But the others seem to have been defeated. And, this is our home. This is where we live. Why would we move from where we live? And that is what it is. But the wall created a cultural barrier, which meant that both sides could see the other side in a slightly different way as being other. Sort of pun intended there, I think, by George R. R. Martin. As for whether there's any other earthworks along the lines of Offa's Dyke, those who don't know, Offa's Dyke is built by, I think, a King Offa of Mercia, which is sort of Western England, to demark where Wales was and his kingdom was. And it's an earthworks, it kind of like goes across the entire rough border between England and Wales. And it's like they've dug out a huge mound going along with a big ditch. So it's basically an earthworks defensive structure that carries on for many miles. In Westeros, no, they tend to use more just sort of natural physical barriers. I don't think there's an equivalent. Tell me in the chat if you know of one. I don't think there's a physical equivalent of Offa's Dyke there, though. James Perkins saying, hello, Robert. A question about the Blackfires and Bloodraven. It has been repeatedly stated that at the time around the Blackfire rebellions was the height of Targaryen magical power. Do we have any reason why this might be the case? They had lost the dragons generations earlier, and it seems clear that the dragons are tied in deeply with the magical health of the world of ice and fire. Were they able to find other ways to feed their power during that time? We know that those kinds of magic require sacrifice. Both the magic of the old gods and the Valyrian fire and blood magic required blood. So why were they able to use it so effectively in what should have been a very non-magical age? I suppose it is possible that it was happening by accident, but this era of Targaryens seems not only to have a greater magical aptitude than prior ages, but also a far greater knowledge and understanding of magic than any since the times of old Valyria. Okay, so I have myself, I suspect, on several occasions said that this is like the most magical era of the Targaryens. So let me explain what I mean by that. There is a generation of Targaryens where they were all dragon dreamers. So Egg and all of his brothers did. We get this from Aemon. He says, all of my brothers dreamt of dragons and those dreams killed them. So we have a whole generation of dragon dreamers. And we also have the two most obviously magic using. There may have been other magic using Targaryens out there, but the two most obviously magic using Targaryens being Bloodraven and Shira Seastar. Now, How can this be? Oh, also, I should probably say you have Aerys the First, who was very bookish, and loved to study the ancient mysteries and the deeper mysteries, the magic-y stuff. And he is said to have been reading specifically about the return of dragons. So we've got three different types of things here that many of us within the sort of the Song of Ice and Fire community have sort of broadly labeled as being, this is a time of magic, heightened magic for the Targaryens. The first is Dragon Dreamers. Dragon Dreamers have happened all the way through the Targaryen history, and we're finding out about them bit by bit as we go through. Aegon the Conqueror, we didn't realize was a Dragon Dreamer. Now we know Daenerys the Dreamer was obviously a Dragon Dreamer. House of the Dragon tells us that Helena was, that Viserys was. And so the books tell us that Dany has dragon dreams, Aemon has dragon dreams, but the time when we hear the most of these dragon dreamers is during that period. That does not seem to be tied to the presence or otherwise of dragons. Dany has dragon dreams. There are no dragons alive at that moment in time. So that seems to be slightly separate. People like Aerys, who are studying magic, that doesn't seem to be dependent on magic being, the ambient level of magic doesn't need to be high for you to be studying the ancient mysteries and the higher mysteries. So that is also independent of it. Bloodraven seems, although we don't know, but he seems to focus, most of his magic seems to be focused initially more on the Blackwood First Men side of his heritage. We're told about his warging. We're told about the sort of the fact that animals could spy for him. That's the kind of thing we're told about originally. He does seem to have a glamour at one point, but that again doesn't seem to be specific to Targaryen-y kind of magic. Melisandre clearly seems to be wearing a glamour. That doesn't seem to be linked to whether the dragons were alive or not. Shira Seastar, we don't know what kind of magic she was using, but she goes over, it would appear later on, I think, to Ashai and learns more magic. So the implication is she is learning magic that is not necessarily dependent on the dragons being there. So all of these different things, I think it's quite easy to sort of like assume there must be, why is it that there's more magic around at that point? I don't think those things are dependent on there being a high level of ambient magic, because some of it is just stuff that always seems to happen with the Targaryens. Some of it seems to be people reading books and being fascinated by magic stuff. Some of it appears to be like Bloodraven using magic from the old gods, which isn't very Targaryen magic, and some of it seems to be other magic. So overall, I still hold to that being the most magic-y period of the Targaryens, but perhaps only because that's the bit that we know or hear about the most. Roman Lakovic saying, if Melisandre truly believes that Stannis is Azor Ahai, why did she have to give him a fake Lightbringer? I mean, it's a really good question. But I think this is a matter of getting into her psychology, that it's kind of fake it till you make it. She has decided that he is. And she has recognized the fact that he hasn't yet done all of the things that she would want him to do as kind of signs. There is something that she keeps on pushing for, which is that dragons coming to life from stone. She wants to do this. She thinks she needs to kill somebody with king's blood in order to do this. She's pushing for it, pushing for it. She thinks this is going to be yet more proof that Stannis is Azor Ahai, but she never quite gets the chance to do it. So when we see a chapter from her POV, we see that she's not a charlatan. She has got magic. She's a very strong magic user, but she is very happy to make people think that she's more magical than she is. By which I mean she's got powders and things that she can like throw onto flames and make them go in different colors, and she's got potions and the like that can help persuade people of various things. She's happy to do stuff that isn't magic, but makes people think is. And so this, I think, psychologically is just an extension of that. She has become convinced that Stannis is Azor Ahai. And therefore, if that's a given fact for her psychologically, I'm sure the psychologists among us would be able to say exactly what's going on here. But she has decided that. That is now fact for her. Therefore, what she has to do is convince other people of it. He's not yet got his sword. Okay, I'll give him the sword, because that will convince other people as well. Because he is. He is. It's not like she's looking personally for the evidences. She's decided he is. And that, I think, is where we're at with it, with her, is that she would need something big to convince her otherwise. I suspect the big thing will be Jon coming back from the dead. Greek Weirwood saying she understands the power of opinion and showmanship. Yeah, absolutely. And Andrew K saying a combination of legit magic and trickery. Yeah, I think that's it. Let's go to a question from Yedonil saying, "Hi Robert, a cuddle for Dan and many thanks to the moderators." Yes, thank you moderators. Also, while I'm doing my thank yous, patrons, thank you. I do say this every week. I mean it every week. I cannot do this without your support. So a huge thank you from me. This is why I always try my very best to answer all of your questions that I possibly can on these live streams, just as a way of thanking you. If you do want to support the channel, the best way is through Patreon. There's a link down in the description. Is there anything else I need to plug while I'm doing this kind of stuff? Probably. Oh, Spotify. I'm now up on Spotify. If you find it easier to watch my videos from the main channel over on Spotify, they seem to be leaning into not just audio stuff, but video things as well now. So I'm uploading all of my old videos there, one a day. So if you want to catch up on my old stuff, then feel free to go and do that. I don't know. That's going to take several months, I think. But once I've got through that, then I will make sure that things come out on YouTube at the same time as they come out on Spotify. And the other thing to say is probably In Deep Sleep. If you're enjoying In Deep Sleep, which is my channel for people who just want to go to sleep listening to me talk about nerdy stuff, then there'll be some more videos coming up on that soon. I know I left it for like a month while I was trying out a few different things, but there are more videos going up on that soon. Let's go to so Yeldenil, what was the question? I was intrigued by Brienne's visit to the Whispers. What do you think its significance is for her development, other than being encouraged to use her Valyrian steel sword? Do you think that the Weirwoods or Bran or Bloodraven have plans or a message for her? And what of her connection to Lady Stoneheart and the general imagery of speaking dead connected to the Whispers? Another question I had is about one of Bran's early visions. Well, let's do the Brienne thing first. I really like Brienne's chapters. I think they're each individually really well written. This chapter is the one that we're talking about. She heads basically way out on a rumor, way off into the Whispers, which is a long way up Cracklaw Point, and doesn't find who she's looking for. It ties off a few things, and there's a real kind of imagery thing there with a weirwood that is growing up that basically no one would ever know about. And that is quite symbolically important because that is showing that the weirwood network is actually not defeated in the south. It's we see this in a number of different places. It's sneakily just starting to come back. So that was an important moment. Her following the leads and finding that actually who she was looking for is not who she was expecting, also is a kind of a hint across with what's going on with the Hound, who we're looking for the Hound. His helmet has now been taken on by other people, so people doing things on behalf of that look like they're the Hound might not actually be the Hound. And this is an important thematic point that we've got going on, which is neither Arya nor Sansa are actually being Arya or Sansa at the moment in time. So Brienne going off and finding that who she thinks she's looking for, she's not actually looking for, is a thematic point to say, actually, she shouldn't be looking for Sansa. She should be looking for Elaine. She shouldn't be looking for Arya. She should be looking for Mercy. But she doesn't know that. So maybe she should be now starting to think in slightly different ways about how to do it rather than just obeying what some random rumors are that she's heard. Second question you've got is about Bran, one of Bran's early visions. While he's still in a comatose state and learning to fly, opening his third eye, he sees three knights, one with a dog's face, which I think is the Hound, one made of stone with a hollow helmet, which I think is the Mountain, and one as golden as the sun. Who is that last one? Jaime or someone connected to Dawn, perhaps? So this is the quote, and this is there's the chapter. I often say a Game of Thrones book one, very low magic, which it is. The prologue has the others. The very last page of the very last chapter has the dragons coming back, but in the middle, almost no magic, except for this chapter. This chapter is Bran's dreams. While he's in a coma, and basically the three-eyed crow is kind of talking to him. But we get this vision. There were shadows all around them being he has visions of his family. One shadow was dark as ash, with the terrible face of a hound. Another was armored like the sun, golden and beautiful. Over them both loomed a giant in armor, made of stone. But when he opened his visor, there was nothing inside but darkness and thick black blood. So, who are these people? Well, I think you're right. I think the Hound is the Hound. I think the Mountain is the Mountain, and I think the person who is armored like the sun, golden and beautiful, is Jaime. So this is basically just threats, significant characters in the lives of the people around him or around his family. So one thing, which is perhaps not exactly what you're asking, but one thing I would kind of draw from this is a rather bleak point, but the one about the Mountain is that the giant in armor made of stone, the Mountain, when he opened his visor, there was nothing inside but darkness and thick black blood. It's, I think, the first bit of foreshadowing, a clue about what is going to happen with the Mountain, because he his head, his skull, is sent to Dawn, and then Robert Strong appears. And some people have said, was that really his head? Was his skull really sent over there? because Robert Strong's now appeared, so surely he's got it. But we don't actually see his head because his helmet is pretty much welded onto his armor. And we also don't see him eat. We don't see him take off the helmet. And if you look into the eye sockets, you can't see anything, just darkness. And I think this is the first clue that we have that actually, yes, the head did go over to Dawn, and Robert Strong doesn't have a head. Suki Drama saying, "Good evening, Robert and friends. I'm wondering if there's any news on the Traveller's Guide remake." No, is the short answer. Thank you. I know people do ask me about this. Somebody else asked about this as well. Keep an eye out for a. I hope to be able to say something in October. So teaser. Um, but yeah, I know that's been a little while. But you also had a Lord of the Rings question dotting about all over the place. During last week's live stream, you talked about Saruman's death in the books. Saruman still meets his death at the hands of Grima Wormtongue in the movies, but it obviously happens far earlier in the story. I'm interested in hearing your take on how the timing and context of this death changes things. Do you see a significance to Saruman being the last antagonist defeated in the war? And is there anything about Saruman's character that movie-only viewers may miss out on by not seeing his Sharky persona? Well, it's an interesting question. I think for me, it's not so much about here's some extra information about Saruman, although that is interesting. What does Saruman do when he's stripped of his power? Is a fascinating extra element. But I think where I would take this is that this is Tolkien included the scouring of the Shire for a reason, a literary reason. Now, a lot of people aren't a big fan of it. A lot of people think that it's one ending too many. Peter Jackson omitted it from the films, as you've just said, and yet people still thought that there were too many endings in Lord of the Rings. And yet George R. R. Martin said this: "The Scouring of the Shire. Brilliant piece of work, which I didn't understand when I was 13 years old. Why is this here? The story's over. But every time I read it, I understand the brilliance of that segment more and more." So it's the section itself that's the important thing, not necessarily Saruman. I agree. Saruman could have been stabbed in the back by Grima earlier, and as far as his personal development, it probably wouldn't have made huge amounts of difference. But why the Scouring of the Shire? Well, the first part is to show the hobbits returning back home and facing up to challenges in their home, using the skills and abilities and strengths that they've learned along the way. This is very much a kind of a hero's journey kind of idea. You start off at home and you go away and you do your big adventure, and then you come back and you have to end at home. You have to, and there is some final issue at home. Students of the hero's journey will be able to tell me exactly what's going on here, but there is a final issue at home that you must deal with, and you have to deal with that, and that is close to home because it's at home. It's not like this big problem that's threatening the entire world out there. Now this is something which is very personal, and so the hobbits come back and deal with the very personal issue of what has happened to the Shire, because at a thematic level, what have they been saving the world for? It's not just a theoretical, oh, I'm going to go and stop Sauron. What are they saving the world for? The Shire. That's where they want to live. That's their home. This is where the people they love are. And they can't just come back and just go, oh, yep, here we go. We'll go back to how it was before because they have experienced things. They are different people. They are different characters, and so you come back and you present them with with this last issue and problem in their home that they deal with the skills and experience that they've learnt along the way. So that's the kind of the thematic issue, and this is along with this idea that if Tolkien understood story so well, if you take Sam as the hero, which he is technically the hero, not always, in fact, most of the time, not the protagonist. Frodo is one of the main protagonists, there are others. But Sam is the hero in technical terms. He is the person who um, we're cheering on. He is the person who is most representative of his homeland. He is the person who the story really kicks off when he arrives on the scene. Gandalf's literally explaining the backstory, and then Sam is hoiked in through the window, and that's when the real story is starting. And the real story ends when Sam returns. It doesn't end when they get back to the Shire. It doesn't end when Frodo goes off sailing off to the west. It ends when Sam, well, I'm back, he said, when he gets back home. So this is about story structure, and it's also about recreating the Shire, not in the same way. Because when you go off, I'm waxing lyrical on this, but I think it's quite an important point. When you go off on that adventure, you are changed. And therefore, what you are fighting for, your interrelationship with that you are fighting for also has to change because you have changed. And this is just dramatically showing it, that they can then recreate the Shire, but it's not going to be exactly the same. In some ways, it will be better. In some ways, it won't be the same as it used to be. So that's what is the genius of the Scaring of the Shire. It's not showing us a little bit about Saruman, it's showing us about the hobbits and how they have moved out and then they've come back. Bang with a question. Is there a fourth dragon? In Bran 7, A Clash of Kings, Summer sees a winged snake whose roar was a river of flame. The hound says dogs don't lie. Do direwolves see the truth? This is an interesting question. Actually, let me see if I can get that up. Winged snake. Let's see if I can quickly get the quote up, because this is the Bran chapter, and it's it's the last chapter of A Clash of Kings, and they've been hiding out in the crypts, and then they emerge and they head out from there and get off, head up north afterwards. So a lot of people have taken this, that where we start off with Bran is walked into summer, and you get this line that you quoted: the smoke and ash clouded his eyes, and in the sky he saw a great winged snake whose roar was a river of flame. He bared his teeth, but then the snake was gone. And a lot of people have said, well, is this a dragon in Winterfell that only Summer saw? And it sounds like one, doesn't it? And I think the answer I would come with is that I can't say no, because that's what it says there. But at the same time, you have to understand that this is being seen through a direwolf's eyes. Now, direwolf does not understand things in the same way that a human does. And the very next line, and when I'm saying this, I'm not just trying to explain stuff away. This is not written in a literal sense. This is written in a way that a direwolf might understand. So the very next line after this, he saw a great winged snake whose roar was a river of flame, is behind the cliffs, tall fires were eating up the stars. Are we literally thinking that there were cliffs, and behind those cliffs there were fires that were going up and eating stars? No, that's not what we're seeing here. The cliffs are walls, and there are fires which were going up, and they were kind of like he couldn't see the stars anymore because the fires were so big and bright. So this is a metaphorical, poetic language seen through the eyes of a direwolf. And I mean, again, the next sentence, there was a crash that made the earth jump under his feet. Did the earth literally jump? No, this is poetic language. So I like the thinking, and I completely understand where people come from. And I think George R. R. Martin did deliberately include this in there to show us or introduce us to the idea that there was a figurative dragon in Winterfell. The figurative dragon is Jon, who has been hiding in Winterfell. So that, I think, is what is going on there. And so it's not a matter of whether direwolves see the truth. It's a matter of they see things in a different way to humans do. Highest ballerina. Who do you think Arya is being set up to kill with her faceless man teachings? Killing Stoneheart doesn't require her to go off to Essos to learn magical assassin techniques. Someone has to require a face change. So a good question. My working theory, which I've said in a number of different places, is that Arya was recruited by the Faceless Men because she fit every single criteria that they possibly could want. She was intelligent, she was proactive, she wasn't scared of killing people. She was at a young enough age that they could mold her, and she did largely obey instructions. She could disappear and her family wouldn't miss her. Everything that they could possibly want for a trainee faceless man. So picking her was not a we want that person so much as, oh, you'd be great. And then she goes over there, and this it becomes very apparent that she has got her kill list. And who is on her kill list? And is she going to give up on that kill list? No, she's not going to give up on that kill list. She kills Darion. One of the first things she does when she's there on a mission for the Faceless Men, she finds a Night's Watchman who's abandoned his post and kills him. She's not given up on the Stark identity. That's why she killed him, because she thinks this is wrong. And yet they keep training her up. And then it's in the pre-release chapter from the Winds of Winter, although in the Mercy chapter, George R. R. Martin has been very clear that that chapter was written years ago. That chapter was originally supposed to be the last chapter of A Storm of Swords for Arya. But then he decided it felt more like a first chapter than a last chapter, so he shifted it out. Then he got rid of the 5-year time gap, and so he then pushed it, and it's gone all the way through to the Winds of Winter. So that book has been written a long time. That chapter has been written for a very long time. And in that chapter, they put Arya as an actor in a stage play all about the most traumatic moments from her childhood. She's there seeing all the terrible things that happened to the Starks. And then a person who's on her kill list magically appears in front of her. It's so suspicious. that it just seems the obvious answer that they deliberately put that person in front of her because they want her to kill person, Ralph, the sweetling. And so if that's what they're trying to do, they've seen who's on her kill list. Who do they actually want her to kill? Yes, Ralph. But is there someone else? Well, my best guess is that the Faceless Men are very, very, very closely connected with the Iron Bank. And the Iron Bank have turned on Cersei. Cersei has refused to pay back her loans. And they've decided they're going to go and support Stannis instead. So, how do they help make sure that Stannis can get onto the throne? Well, they're loaning him some money as well, but perhaps they could try and kill some important people in Team Cersei, including Cersei herself. So what they know is that they could train up Arya and then just release her back into the wild, and she would go off and try and kill the people that they wanted to kill anyway. So that's my take on what's going on with Arya, is that they think, okay, so she wants to kill the Mountain, she wants to kill Cersei. These are the people they probably don't care about at all, but she wants to kill those people. Let's train her up and send her off. EVB, my question is about King's Blood. Who has it? What qualifies for King's Blood? Does Robb have it? Does Mance? Do all the Starks have it because of the Kings of Winter? Or is it only the Targaryens? Well, an excellent question. This George R. R. Martin, we have to say this, I think, at the start of a lot of these answers. George R. R. Martin has a very soft magic system, by which we mean he deliberately doesn't want us to know all of the technicalities. He doesn't want us to have the formulae. He doesn't want us to be able to know if you take this thing here and that thing there, and then you say those words and wave your hands in this direction, then that is the outcome. He thinks, I tend to agree with him, but he thinks if you know all of that, it kind of takes away the mystery of magic. And if you take away the mystery of magic, you kind of take away some of the scariness of magic. You now know everything that Melisandre is capable of. If you don't understand how magic works, then you don't really know exactly what Melisandre is capable of. We take it for granted now, but the idea that she could give birth to a shadow baby that immediately turns into an assassin with Stannis's face that goes and kills Renly, that's actually kind of scary stuff. We didn't know she could do that before we read the book. I had no idea. What else is she capable of? We'll have to wait and see what she tries. So, George R. R. Martin wants this to be a mystery. And with that in mind, he has got this principle that, I mean, a clear magical principle, which is that all magic requires sacrifice in some way. He's said this a number of times, and it's very clear in the books that this is one of the principles of magic. So if you perform magic, there has to be some kind of sacrifice. The bigger the sacrifice, the more powerful the magic, roughly. And so, if you're going to sacrifice someone, this is blood. And the more important someone is, then the bigger the sacrifice. If you sacrifice a king, that would theoretically therefore give you a lot more power. If you sacrifice the heir to a king, that's probably not the same as actually a king, but still quite a lot. If you sacrifice somebody who is the bastard child of a king, yeah, there's some king's blood there. Again, it's another notch down. And so you then obviously have to go into this, but is that person actually a king? Or is that person actually a king? And you have to sort of say, well, it's a matter of what recognition they have and what kind of sacrifice it is. So who has king's blood? Well, you could argue lots of people have king's blood one way or another. Melisandre wants to be sacrificing Edric Storm. Edric Storm is the bastard son of Robert Baratheon, who is somebody who used to be a king, but his family is no longer kings. So she clearly thinks there's still some magic there, which seems to imply there must be magic elsewhere. You go to, say, Euron, who has strapped his lover, his pregnant lover, to the front of his boat, clearly intending his unborn child, who has king's blood because he is, let's not forget, king of the Ironborn. That is a sacrifice with king's blood. So who else has king's blood? I mean, it really depends on your perspective. Levac saying, I firmly believe it was just the wolf's interpretation of the castle in full flame, sending up gouts of fire and black smoke. Smoke can catch fire itself in bad conditions. Yeah, I mean, I think I broadly agree with that. That's in terms of the dragon at Winterfell. Auntie Slayer, cheers to Robert and to the mods. Have you read the Red Rising series, Robert? If not, highly recommend. Supposedly it will be the next epic fantasy / sci-fi TV series. Hope you've been well. Plan to attend more streams going forward. Well, fantastic for you to be on more streams. Let me just, sorry, I'm having a mind blank. I'm just going to quickly Google Red Rising to see whether I have. Chris Brown, no, I haven't. Wikipedia tells me it is a 2014 dystopian science fiction novel by Pierce Brown. Okay, so the answer is no. I haven't read it, but I will take that as a recommendation. Thank you very much. Yeah, so obviously I will have a look at that. It's the next TV show. So if it is going to be made into a TV show, then I will have a look at it. Thank you very much. Chelsea Oliver. Hi, Robert. In your opinion, if R and L does equal J, why do you think Ned never told Cat the truth? I understand why at the start, but as the years go on, yeah, I did do a video on this one. If you're wanting the detail on it, feel free to go over to the main channel and have a look at that. I think everyone's agreed on why initially. Why wouldn't he tell Cat? He didn't know Cat. He'd known her for 2 weeks. He'd been forced to marry her basically by politics, and it was absolutely, he promised that Jon's identity would be kept a secret. So absolutely, why would he tell it to anyone? Least of all this woman that he didn't know at all. So I think most people understand the logic why he didn't start with. I think some people do struggle with the, okay, but 10 years later, Cat was being really horrible to Jon. Couldn't he just say something to her? Just say, look, actually, you know what? He's actually not my son. You'll never guess whose son he is. Why didn't he do that? I think the answer is, I mean, sort of threefold, really. The first is that the need for secrecy is still there. And so the fewer people he tells, then the closer kept the secret it is. I think the second one is that he is a man of his word. And if he promised to tell no one, which he may well have done, then he tells no one. And then thirdly, well, actually, let's make it 4 points while I think of them. Thirdly, I think that there was the risk that if he told her, actually, you know what, he's not my bastard son. I've just been pretending all this time, and it's just to save his life. There has to be a chance that she would change her approach to Jon. And maybe even to Ned. You've been lying to me all this time. And also to Jon, would she suddenly start being nice to him? Either of those things might start raising a few suspicions. So better safe than sorry. But then finally, and this is a sort of I don't know, it's a harder point to make, but I think it's one of the most important ones in terms of understanding Ned as a person. He had something akin to post-traumatic stress from what happened at the Tower of Joy. We see that in the fact that he has these dreams. He had those dreams again. That can't be good. Um, uh, he uh, he tries his best not to think about what happened. He deliberately makes sure he goes to huge lengths to make sure nobody goes. It's not just he doesn't ever have to go back down there again. Nobody knows where this is. He tears down the entire tower. He refuses to tell his own bannermen where their lords and the people who are with him are. He doesn't. This is where the whole Lady Barbary Dustin issue comes in, because Lord Dustin was one of Ned's companions down at the Tower of Joy, and he died. And Ned basically buried him there. And then he heads back up north, and he returns the horse. He goes to Barbary Dustin. So here's your husband's horse, but yeah, your husband's dead. And she says, "Okay, I see you've got your sister's bones with you to bury them back up here. Can I have my husband's bones? Because our place is called Barrowton. We care a lot about barrows and burying our dead." And Ned goes, "No, I haven't got them." And she says, "Okay, could you tell me where they are?" And he says, "No, I'm not going to tell you where they are." Um, and it's this is the start of the antagonism that she has towards him. Um, he goes to huge lengths. He creates enemies out of people who could be allies because of this, because he has this kind of real stress, traumatic stress about what happened. So I think those are the sort of the four reasons why. I think everyone understands why initially, but it's the why not later. Yeah. Okay, let's go to a question from Orion's Orcas, saying, "I'm coming on 68 years old in October, and I'm afraid I will not see the day when The Winds of Winter comes out in print. Have faith, please." So I want to ask you two questions. Is it possible that Jon could come back without the Red Witch's help? Bloodraven seems to be guiding things along for the Starks. And Quaith for Danny. "I'd like to see Jon coming back from walking into Ghost via the power of Bran and Bloodraven, having gained knowledge about the lands of Always Winter." So, is it possible that he comes back without the intervention of Melisandre? Yes, it's possible. I think, though, we have to work out what the building blocks are for this. Ned, if we had... Ned? Jon, if we take the working assumption that I certainly have, and I think most of us have, is that Jon, when his body is killed, his spirit goes into Ghost, his direwolf. We then have to say, well, what's happening to his body? All the foreshadowing in that last chapter is that body is going to be frozen in the ice cells. He is going to go into Ghost. So what do we need for Jon to come back? Well, we need his body to be thawed out, and we need someone somehow to be pushing his spirit or soul from Ghost back into his own body at the right moment. Now, is Melisandre going to do that? My best guess, I did a video on this, but my best guess is that she and many people will think we should burn that body eventually. And that will first need to be thawed because his body is going to be frozen. She may well already have a fire going. There are other people she wishes to burn at the wall. But if his body is thawed out, then how do we get his spirit or soul back from Ghost into Jon's body? Now, yeah, that could be Bran. Bloodraven is my current favourite for doing that. There are others who might do that. So my general feel is that she will not bring him back from the dead, but it will look like she does. She will light a fire. Jon's body will be put onto it. It will thaw. He will take this big breath. He will emerge from the fire alive once more, having been dead for a long period of time. And she will, as we've already talked, there's more than a hint of the charlatan to her. She will claim this as her or her god. But it's not really going to be her. It's really going to be whoever it is who's going in, which could well be Bloodraven, but there are other candidates, and pushing his body back. Second question. Do you think the books will end with Bran being king? I know George R. R. Martin must have had a great idea for this when he began, but a green seer who cannot father children does not make any sense to me. In fact, it makes me a little crazy. The children of the forest made the others and all the trouble that comes with them. Bran should be instrumental in forging a new pact with the children of the forest. But I do not think the book will end happily ever after for Dany, the dragons, and I believe Jon will become a ghost of his former self, the Frodo of A Song of Ice and Fire. I do believe the Stark children will become the most prominent in Westeros, but not with Bran as king. What do you think? Yeah, so really interesting sort of set of questions there. Let me start with the sort of the context stuff we have, which is that George R. R. Martin has been clear that the first character he thought of was Bran. The first chapter he wrote was from Bran's perspective. After that, he thought about Bran having siblings. So Bran is essential. We sometimes think of Bran as just being like, oh, he's like the tree wizard bit over there. This story's really about Jon and Dany and Tyrion, whatever. He is one of the central characters. The whole story started with a thought about him. So that's the first part. The second part is this, and we try not to put too much emphasis on what happens on the show, but sometimes when we hear that this is stuff that comes from George R. R. Martin himself, we do have to pay a bit of attention. The showrunners said when, way back between seasons 4 and 5, they had this big handover meeting with George R. R. Martin. It went on for days. George R. R. Martin told them all of his thoughts, his plans. Feel free to insert your own thoughts and comments about what they did with those thoughts and plans, but the meeting happened. And they said emerging from that, there were 3 WTF moments for them. We know one of them was the Hodor moment. One of them was the burning of Shireen. And then the third, they've never 100% clarified, but all of the hints are the third was Bran becoming king. So that's the overall context. I would sort of add to that I've not done this myself personally, but after the TV show happened, History of Westeros, Aziz went through the books again and looked for foreshadowing of this. Because he'd similarly, like most of us, hadn't thought, oh, Bran will be king. And so he thought, did we miss something? Is there something there that we didn't pick up on before? And he went through, and his conclusion, you can probably find the video somewhere. He will have done a podcast on it. His view is that, yeah, actually, there's more there than you think there might be. There are Fisher King references. I talked about this, I think, a week or two ago. There are Fisher King references to Bran, which implies he might become king. And there are other references about him sort of overseeing the whole land, which we previously thought were about, he just sees things as a green seer, but perhaps he's overseeing the whole land as king. So it's not that it's against whether you think those are strong bits of evidence or not. It's not as if it's against what we've got in the books. But within the books, I think that the thing which I don't know that it persuades me, because I'm not 100% sold on this, but I think it's likely, is thinking about, well, what's going to be left at the end of this story. And you kind of say this actually here, that you said, I do believe that the Stark children will become the most prominent in Westeros, but not with Bran as king. So I would agree that the Starks are going to emerge as the strongest. Of all of these families, I think House Baratheon is broadly going to go. The Targaryens, Dany, I don't think is going to be hanging around to rule the Seven Kingdoms at the end of this. I don't think the Dornish are going to be in any state to be ruling. House Arryn is largely disappeared. The Tullys, nobody's going to vote Edmure as king. The Iron Islanders, no, I don't think anyone's going to be voting for them as king. The Tyrells, a lot of them are going to get destroyed, I think, by Cersei. The Lannisters, are we talking about Tyrion as king? I don't think that we've got huge amounts of foreshadowing for that. Him ruling Casterly Rock, yes, that kind of makes sense. And so you work through all of these, and then you say, well, okay, so actually probably the Starks are going to be the strongest house. And then you say, what happens in Westeros when you have uncertainty about who should rule? You have a great council. This has happened officially a couple of times, unofficially a bit more. But you have this great council, and those great lords there decide who should rule. And they did this in a really small way on the TV show. I thought it looked a bit naff. They just had the 10, 12 lords sat in a semicircle, debating about what's going to happen next. But they weren't 10, 12 lords. It was the Starks. Bran was there, Arya was there, Sansa was there. They had Edmure, who was basically doing what the Starks said. You had Davos, who worked as hand of the king for them. You go through the list and you say, actually, the Starks have got a casting vote here. Who they think should be ruler will be ruler. So if you accept this logic that the Starks are going to be, that there is going to be a great council, and that the Starks are going to be the most powerful, who are the Starks going to put as ruler? Jon's going to say no. I agree with you. Jon is the Frodo figure of this. He's going to leave the Seven Kingdoms. Arya doesn't want to be queen. Rickon, I suspect, is not going to make it that far. Sansa, I think, is probably, she'll have had enough of the South and the King's Landing. She wants to be up in Winterfell. She will be the Lady of Winterfell. So who's left? Bran. This is not a cast iron logic, but I think if you just try and put your head into this position of who is likely to be who are likely to be the power brokers at that moment in the story, it's probably the Starks. And which of the Starks are actually eligible to rule? Well, Bran. Would the other lords be okay with somebody who can't father children ruling? Well, perhaps they would, because perhaps they don't want there to be a dynasty. Perhaps they think, well, what we really need now is just somebody to be ruling for a while, and then we'll figure out what happens after that. Matthew Kingsland, thank you very much for the super chat. I didn't see a question attached to that. If there is one, then please do add it in, and I'll try and pick it up on it. Surf Friend saying, happy Thursday, Robert, and to you too. I've always been a little confused by the wall. When you think about it, the immense size could be pointless. There are numerous ways wildlings can get beyond it. We assume the purpose was to stop the others, and we know dragons do not appear to want to cross. This suggests that the barrier is magical rather than physical. But is the immense size somehow related to the magic? The valley to the west is also baffling. Does the magic extend to stop the others simply walking around it? You also talk about how George will deal with the two threats, others and dragons. and how magic is clearly expanding again in world. Might the story ending result in all magic ceasing to exist? Well, let's talk about the wall first. Although actually, just in the chat, Andrew K saying a key miss in the show is that they left out that Bran will likely take some metaphysical action against the others. Hero status of sorts heightens his claim. Yeah, I mean, I think he will have a more obvious role than just sort of sitting there in front of the weirwood tree. But the wall. So the wall, we're told, did not start massively high. It started a normal wall height. I mean, probably a high wall, but not like as high as the wall is now. And we're told from the very beginning it was the foundations of the wall that are magical. And we get this shown in many ways. You pointed that the dragons don't want to cross it, or Silverwing at least didn't want to cross it. Jon cannot connect with Ghost while they're on different sides of the wall. When we get Melisandre, she thinks of it as being a hinge in the world. Her magic is more powerful at the wall, she says, because the wall itself is so powerful. So there's a lot there to reinforce this is a magical barrier, not a physical barrier, which kind of explains how and why the wall goes up to the water's edge to the east, and that's it. And then it goes up to sort of like a chasm in the west and then stops there. And you can, and many people often do, just go around the wall. You could get in a boat and travel around, or you could go down into the chasm, the valley, and walk through. There are ways to get past the wall. So what does that imply? Clearly, this isn't the physical barrier, isn't the thing, except and until this does add to the working theory that the others can't cross running water. So they can't go out onto the sea. They can't go down over the river. So that is very possible. But the bigger thing is the line, which could extend out into the sea. It could extend further than the actual wall itself goes, the line of magic. So is it... I mean, I think I'm basically agreeing with you here, is that the height of it is that happened just physically over time. Each generation of the Night's Watch, they just kind of like added a bit more, just a bit more height. Then they would take gravel up there so that they could, when at the top, so they didn't slip on it, and that just got to like crunch down into the wall, and then they added a bit more onto it. So it was like the height was just a natural thing over many periods of time. It's the magical barrier that's the real thing. The second question is whether the story ending could result in all magic ceasing to exist. Well, yes, I mean, I've said about needing to deal with the two threats, the others and the dragons, and I use that rather vague language because that doesn't mean killing them. That means stopping the threat. We've many times talked about how the Robert Frost poem is influential here. There are two massive threats to the Seven Kingdoms. One is the others, and the other is the dragons. And we don't think of the dragons as being an equal threat a lot of the time because we kind of like Dany. But every time you think about what dragons are like, they're going off burning things, and humans are probably right to be afraid of them. So I think the story ends with those two threats being dealt with in some way. The others, perhaps they get to be killed, but perhaps the magic is undone, that the magic that brought them there. The dragons, perhaps one or more of them are killed, or perhaps they go away to somewhere. And they're no longer threatening Westeros. So those two threats are dealt with. Does that mean that magic itself has gone? I don't think so, because the Weirwood network will still be there, and that means that there's still going to be Greenseers. Bran will still have magic of some kind, so that kind of magic is still there. Magic users that are not specific to dragons or the others will also be there, but it will potentially become a situation that is very much like what we saw in book one, where there isn't day-to-day magic in Westeros. That's just a thing. To the extent that in book one you find the characters that we are taught to see, view as wise, as knowledgeable, like Maester Luwin, like Tyrion, they scoff at the idea of magic. They laugh at the very thought of it. That is perhaps where we will end up. But more likely than not, we're not going to get a 20 years later chapter from George R. R. Martin. So we will just see the dragons no longer a threat, the others no longer a threat. Right, I think that's me. Oh no, there's one more in the chat saying James Boris saying hello Robert, thank you very much, very generous. I hope all is well. I can't get the return of the others conundrum out of my mind. I think something's happening around the 250s where Bloodraven goes missing and Craster is of age to father children, but what? I know what you mean. This is one of those things that I kind of like. I want to have an answer to. So the fundamental question is, why have the others returned now? I think I should probably do a video with a title, something like that, because it's curious. Why have they come back now? They've been gone for thousands of years. Why now? Well, the first answer is that they haven't just literally now appeared. They have clearly been around for a bit. You mentioned Craster there. He had been doing his rather one-sided deal with them for what appears to be a few decades. So they appear to have been around and about for a while. Is there something that summoned them? For a time, I wondered whether something happened at the tragedy of Summerhall that might have prompted this. I now suspect probably not. I know some people have theories that they have a culture and legends and prophecies in the same way that humans do, and if humans are starting to get prophecies about Azor Ahai reborn, they are also getting their own prophecies about, okay, we need to deal with this because there's this person over there. Maybe they've got a hero, the Night's King reborn, whatever it is. The short answer is we have not been given the information to be able to categorically say why. We have been given very, very little information about the others, in fact. So if you're confused about this, do not worry. Everyone who's sort of being I think critically looking at the story has a nagging uncertainty about this. There are theories out there. I know various people have theories and some people hold to them quite strongly, but I think that we haven't been told yet. So I think I'm coming around to saying I have to make a video on this one. So you've prompted me to do this. I'll have a deeper look just to see if there's more here. But at the moment, I think the answer is no. Let's go to Ghost Dog. If you had to guess, what do you think will be the two objects on the covers of The Winds of Winter and A Dream of Spring? A fun question. So, what the covers will be on those books? I will answer this, but I think I have to sort of do the usual preamble first, which is that there will be a lot of different book covers. There have been a lot of different book covers. They will shift and change in different types. The Winds of Winter will be in at least 2 volumes, if not 3. So we're not talking about one book cover, we're talking about a number of book covers. And whereas the most recent set, particularly I think in American Britain, has had just an object on the front of each of the different books, that doesn't mean that that's the stylistic approach they're going to go for when they're releasing the next one. They might reissue all of the books with a completely different artistic direction. So all of that kind of preamble out of the way, what might we see? Well, I have to admit, I really do like Ertaç Altınos, a great artist whose work has appeared several times in Rise of the Dragon and elsewhere. And so he did a mock-up of a cover. This was a mock-up. He hadn't been commissioned by George R. R. Martin to do this, which had like dragon glass. It's a really good cover, dragon glass for the Winds of Winter. I like that idea. I also like the idea people have done one with a horn on it for Dragonbinder, which will clearly be very important, or the Horn of Winter. So there are a number of different options if you're just going for one thing. The problem I have with there just being one thing stylistically is that this book is going to be so huge. It's going to cover so many different plots. We're going to cover what's going on with Dany, at which point maybe you would have Dragonbinder, because that will be hugely important. But then what about Arya? Arya's plotline's got nothing to do with Dragonbinder. Then you have what's going on at the wall, and the Winterfell, the reclamation of Winterfell. Maybe you should have Snow going on. So the different plot lines, what's going to happen in King's Landing, the different plot lines all kind of deserve different things. So I wonder whether we're going to have a slightly more stylistic thing, which doesn't just have one item, a crown or whatever, but it will have a number of different things. Let's go to another question in the chat. Just try to find this. Canny Sam was saying the others can't cross running water. If only they had a way to make water stop running. I see the point you're making. This is a sort of a play on the old undead ideas, the vampire ideas that vampires can't cross running water, and has played through to ideas about the wall. Why does the wall end at the water's edge? Because they know that they're okay going across there. And rather intriguingly, they did sort of play with that on the TV show, where there was a scene, I can't remember when one of the White Walkers there, followed by a number of whites, was walking in a straight line, came across the stream, looked at it, and then turned and went in a different direction. So they kind of played with that idea there as well. I also play with this idea with the, it's not a theory, it's an observation, that a lot of the important things that will be needed in a second long night are on islands, the Isle of Faces, the dragon glass mines on Dragonstone, the Sword Dawn on the island of Starfall, and so on. It feels a bit too much to be coincidental. But Cast Ballerina, there's a very convincing post about Petty Malice being what Brienne would have become with the 5-year gap. Malice is cynical, angry, and mutilated. Do you think the lack of gap will spare Brienne from the same fate? I mean, I've not seen that, so I don't know the logic behind it. But I think George R. R. Martin has set Brienne up as one of the very few characters who are good, a true knight image, and in echo of Dunk. And I think that she will retain that, or attempt to retain that, throughout the rest of the story. So I don't think a 5-year time gap would have affected her that drastically. and I don't think George R. Martin would have wanted it. But as I say, I've not read the article, so I don't know. Adam, who would you like to hear narrating The Winds of Winter? Well, so this is a valid question because the voice actor whose name temporarily eludes me, who narrated the first 5 books, sadly died a few years ago. So the question is, who would do it? I think all I would say, as someone who does small amounts of kind of, obviously I record things on a daily basis. The big challenge in A Song of Ice and Fire is the different voices, the amount of different characters, and you need to be able to capture that. So I think you need a proper voice actor, not just somebody who's good at reading stuff. You need a proper voice actor. Um, uh, I will say, I've said many times before, Harry Lloyd, I think, does the Duncan Egg stories brilliantly well, astonishingly well. I don't know whether he would work as well doing the main. It's a very different feel of book, A Song of Ice and Fire compared to Duncan Egg. But I would definitely, if I ran the world, I would definitely give him an audition. Um, I would definitely also try again. His name eludes me, Sajora. I think he's got a fantastic voice. I think that he would be well worth a go. So, yeah, I think there are a few people out there who could do this. I'd quite like to keep it in the family, as it were, rather than having somebody completely new. Nor a really famous voice from elsewhere, like a Stephen Fry, who was an excellent audio narrator, but I think I would rather keep that slightly separate. So yeah, that's my general take. I don't have a specific name in mind, but I think that the key is that this has to be somebody who can do, without it becoming caricatures, do the different voices. Um, I think that's me caught up. Roy Dotrice, thank you very much, Kelly. And Andrew Kay, yes, he was the name. Ian Glenn, Kelly helping me out with that one. Thank you. I was having a mind blank about names of people. Um, uh, Samantha Drake, fun fact, Harry Lloyd is a descendant of Charles Dickens. He is indeed. This is a very fun fact. I think he's something like his great grandson. Charles Dickens, as well as obviously being a fantastic writer, he performed his books. So he would write something and then he would do a tour of him reading the story. So he was effectively a voice actor of his age. Um, Let's go to Maura Lee. Hi, Robert and Dan. Are there any updates regarding any future movies, TV shows, books, and the play to do with The Song of Ice and Fire? How about The Hunt for Gollum, or The Rings of Power, or The Witcher? Are you doing any future content for The Witcher shows? Well, so for The Witcher, I will be doing more content. I'm moving increasingly towards the books rather than the TV shows. But the new Witcher book is coming out, I think, the end of September, and I will definitely be doing a little bit of Witcher content to be coinciding with that. As for The Hunt for Gollum, the film, which is the Peter Jackson and co-helmed film, he's not going to be directing. It's going to be Andy Serkis. But we had Andy Serkis did I think an interview on this a few days ago, so we've got a sort of very brief update from him. Basically, we've got a release date already, which is the 17th of December 2027. We've got so that's like the classic Lord of the Rings release date just before Christmas. And we've got a script which has been written, which everybody says is great. They would say that, of course, but here's hoping. And Andy Serkis in that interview basically said they would be filming next year. So expect to start. I mean, I imagine some point in the early part of next year we might start getting some casting news, and I mean, I don't know how long they're going to take filming it, but I wouldn't imagine it'll be a short shoot, but then take quite a long time afterwards doing the post-production. But yeah, December 2027 leaves them a goodly long period. Let's go to Ghost Dog. Bit of a weird one, if that's okay. Always okay. Given how George R. R. Martin has said that fire whites subsequently have their blood congeal and stop pumping, theoretically, would that mean male fire whites become impotent, given how male anatomy works? Or is there a magical workaround potentially? Just thinking on the implications for when a certain Lord Commander meets a certain Dragon Queen. Okay, so let's try and tiptoe around this one without us getting banned. Yes, George R. R. Martin has said fire whites, or whites generally, when they die, then blood congeals. This is where cold hands comes from. He's got black hands because the blood runs down and sort of congeals in the hands. So not nice, but that's the way it is. Which, as you point out, does seem to imply male anatomy being what it is. When you need blood flow, that might be an issue. And George R. R. Martin has sort of said in passing many years ago, he referred to Jon, or he referred to Beric Dondarrion as a fire white, which was the first time that we'd heard that phrase, which was, and I don't think he used the word foreshadowing, but it was paved the way for Jon, basically, was what he said, because he, within book canon, clearly can't yet say we're still stuck in this weird world where Jon has just been killed, and he doesn't want to officially say Jon's coming back because that'd be spoiling his books, but we all know he will. So that's the kind of the situation. But my working assumption that we went through earlier, and many other people's working assumption, is that Jon is not going to be a classic fire white in the same way that Beric Dondarrion is. He is going to have been frozen. His body is going to be frozen and then unfrozen, and his spirit, soul, whatever, pushed back into it. Which means that, whereas, yes, I think he's going to become more wolfish, I think that he's going to be a lot more scarred. I don't think he will therefore be a classic fire white. I think that his body and the anatomical logistics will be different to what they would be for fire whites. So I hope that puts your mind at rest about any potential things for certain Lord Commanders meeting certain Dragon Queens. Gideon saying, as mentioned in House of the Dragon, certain houses may have the blood of the dragon, though diluted. Do we know of any close relatives to the Targaryens or potential dragon seeds at the time of A Song of Ice and Fire? Well, so the Baratheons are the classic example. So they are just 2 generations back. There's a Targaryen there. There are a few houses. House Plum is another example where, and you get Brown Ben Plum all the way over in Essos claiming descent from Targaryens. The Martells claim descent from the Targaryens, which is why Quentin thought that he could perhaps tame a dragon, because he's, 1/8, 16th Targaryen. So there are plenty of houses that do. The more intriguing possibility is, what about the Blackfires and any Targaryens who've been over to Lys or somewhere else like that and maybe had some children over there? George R. R. Martin is very open with the fact that if you go to someone like Aerion Targaryen, who was exiled over, he very probably had some bastard children over in Essos. So there are some there, and that is, 3 generations back. So there definitely are around the world a whole load of people with Valyrian and Targaryen ancestry, but quite diluted. The kind of a technical thing here is a bit weird as well, because we tend to think of someone like Daenerys as being this pure Targaryen. She's very Targaryen. But when you look at her ancestry and you go back, you see, actually, she's probably at best an eighth Targaryen. And in reality, probably even less than that. Depends on how you count it. But yes, the generations before her, then that was so um, her father and mother were both Targaryens, but then her father's father married a Blackwood, so she's actually part Blackwood. And then you keep on going back through generations. There are other families that are married in. So there's a lot there. Um, and there are a lot of people who have some potential Targaryen blood there. But will that be a plot point? Not a significant one. Martin S. Who would win in a fight between Boba Fett and Luce Theron Telamon? Wow. Okay, so this is Star Wars and the Wheel of Time. Well, I'm going to throw this to the chat because I'd love to know what the chat think. This is one of those ones we go, okay. Have to work out what happens. I think it really depends on who gets the first strike in. If Boba Fett lands behind him and shoots him, then game over. But he might not be able to. Yeah, Northern Tommy saying, is Boba in full kit? I think that would probably be quite a significant advantage. Okay, let's go to Maura Lee. Just checking on any future collaborations with History of Westeros regarding the rest of the Song of Ice and Fire books. Well, in answer to that, I'm doing lots of collaborations with History of Westeros. You will see them on my main channel with the videos. Yeah, at some point we'll do another going through one of the books. Haven't got anything in the diary though. Any updates with collaborations on other channels or interviews? Nothing, I'm afraid. Sorry, I've been focusing mainly on the videos. But yeah, no, so I've got nothing lined up. But at some point, yes. And will I be doing more things on the channel like I used to do Westworld and the Wheel of Time? So I've not. So my general plan on this on the main channel is to focus in certainly for the rest of the year. At the end of every year, I take a couple of weeks off, which I highly, if you're able, I highly recommend is a great thing for the brain just to relax and not think about things, and then ideas come. But certainly for the second half of this year, the focus is still going to be staying on Lord of the Rings and A Song of Ice and Fire, with a little bit of Witcher content. 2 points this year. The first point this year will be when the new Witcher book comes out. The second point is that The Witcher Season 4 is coming out, I think, in December. So I'll probably do a little bit of content on that to tie in with that as well. As we're going forwards, I would say the worlds that I've been most often asked to cover have been Dune and the Wheel of Time. People do ask me to cover other things. I'll throw this to the chat. I will be very interested to see if I did expand to one, and I'm not promising I will at the moment. I do not have time, but if I did expand out into one other thing, what would you like that thing to be? Put it in the chat and I'll have a quick flick through. I'd be fascinated to know. Martin S says, I think Luce Theron, personally. I mean, I can respect that. Carl Kostnark saying, Aziz does a live stream every Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm sure he would want everyone to come. Well, absolutely, yes. I'd shout out to that. I'm sure one of the moderators here will be able to put a link across. In fact, Carl Kostnark has done so to History of Westeros. So please do go and check out that. Milton Christopher Appling. Regarding The Prince That Was Promised, Pardon me. Do any other believers of the prophecy understand it to be a Targaryen other than the Targaryens? What is the basis for the Targaryens believing it must be one of them? And doesn't Bloodraven believe it must be a Targaryen with Blackwood ancestry? Do any of the other adherents have specific familial expectations? Right, so I think we need to be clear about a distinction between Azor Ahai Reborn and the Prince that was promised. They are basically the same prophecy, at least reading between the lines of the conversations between Melisandre and Maester Aemon, when they happily interchange the two phrases. And neither of them query, well, why are you saying that? You should be saying this. They both kind of accept that the other person knows what they're talking about, and they know that the two are talking about the same person. So lots of people think about Azor Ahai Reborn and there's no link that we know of there across to the Targaryens. The prince that was promised, we used to only know the last bit of this, which is the Wood Witch, the Ghost of High Heart, who came to court at the time of King Aegon V with Jenny of Old Stones. She prophesied that the prince that was promised was going to come from the line of Aerys and Rhaella. So, Targaryens. Now, it's since then transpired that there must be more. This has to have gone back further. And House of the Dragon has said the prince that was promised prophecy comes all the way down from Aegon the Conqueror, and is tied in with this idea of you have to be ruling the Seven Kingdoms, and the Seven Kingdoms must be united, and therefore you need a prince who's going to be leading against the threat from the others. Perhaps that got lost somewhere along the way. I absolutely 100% believe that, or I should say 99% believe, that Bloodraven is responsible for the kind of the pruning of the Targaryen family tree to get it to what he thought was the right line. Which seems to imply that he had some additional knowledge or understanding of this. Maybe he got it from a book. Maybe there was another prophecy that we're currently unaware of. But he certainly seems to have been proactively trying to achieve that thing there. But it's just the Targaryens who think that the prince that was promised is about a Targaryen. But that's because the prince that was promised seems to only have been given to the Targaryens. The wider Azor Ahai Reborn is given to many people. Right, let's have a quick flick through. I did ask if I were to do other things, what people would like. Shannara series, says Damien James O'Farrell. Cozy Stormcloud, World of Warcraft would be good. Elder Scrolls and Dune, says Kashta Ardeth Griffith. Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Elder Scrolls, but I've been waiting for number 6 for as long as I've been waiting for the Winds of Winter. Let's put it that way. And Kingkiller Chronicles or the Mistborn trilogy would be good, says Mu Aragon. Yeah, a few people have recommended that. Okay, yeah, so that's a good few ideas there. A button-up reader saying Kingkiller Chronicles. Yeah, book 3 we've been waiting for about the same amount of time as well. Let's go to Lady Pushkins. I know it's difficult without much evidence, but do you think Bloodraven is in the cave/tree by choice or force? I think strongly this is by choice. I think he chose to go north of the wall. He chose to go north of the wall because he wanted to meet the Children of the Forest, and I think he was very happy to gain the extra power by being plugged into the network. Could you do, Lady Pushkins says, could you do show and tell recommendations for A Song of Ice and Fire? You mentioned the Land of Ice and Fire in the Varys stream that piqued my interest. On that note, I missed last week's Varys stream, so you've got a question about that. I will happily do a quick show and tell because I've got the Land of Ice and Fire here and a couple of other things which it's absolutely fine. Just some things that I'm enjoying right now. This is, I've mentioned this last time, this is quite hard to get hold of, but it's the Lands of Ice and Fire. And it's basically, if you open it up, it's just a map book. And those are all the different maps they've got on there. So if you want to like go into Bravos or see what's going on in Essos or up north or King's Landing, that's what it is. And these are big size maps like this. So that is a good thing. As I say, they printed that quite a few years ago. Don't think they've reprinted it, so copies are. I mean, I wouldn't say it's rare, but it's you may have to shop around a little bit. Another thing I would recommend over on the Tolkien side of things, I may have mentioned this before on this. When you've got a great artist like a Miriam Ellis, and then she produces a book of her art, then you want to pay attention. Not sponsored to do this, I just think she's got great art. So, I mean, you may well have seen some of her art in some of my videos. This is beautiful. Do go and check it out. There's some. So, I mean, I really like the cover art there. Do go and check that one out. That's excellent. And then another thing, which is also, I mean, it's not easy to get hold of, but is excellent for lovers of Tolkien, is the Atlas of Tolkien's Middle-earth, which is it's quite old now. It's been around for a long time. Karen Wynne Fonstadt produced this, who was a professional cartographer, and she went through in detail looking at Tolkien's world. Christopher Tolkien looked at this, and we get this kind of like level of detail of everything that we've got going on. So let's have a look. What have we got going on here? Here's the Misty Mountains, and then Lothlorien. There, I mean, if you want to see the maps of what is in Tolkien's world in even greater detail than what Tolkien wrote, then that's there. Anyway, so that's my random recommendations on books. There are many more, obviously, but those are the ones that were to hand when I was here and that I'm quite excited about at the moment. But you also asked about Varys. Why do you think Varys didn't try to get rid of Sansa in some way? By marrying Joffrey, it gives the Lannisters even more power, and the Starks and the northern in the north. I would have thought he would have wanted her back to Winterfell or get her out and hide her somewhere, and use her in some way for his Aegon cause. I mean, it's an interesting question. Sansa did get away, is the short answer, and Varys probably will have been aware of some of it, perhaps. I think the relationship between Varys and Littlefinger is a fascinating one. I suspect they knew a bit about what each other were doing most of the time, and so if she was going to escape, and at the very least, I suspect that Varys understood that Littlefinger wanted to get Sansa out, even if he didn't know what the plot was, then he would be very happy for that to happen. Because, as you say, he wouldn't have wanted the Lannisters to have a stronger hold over the north. But sort of added to that, it's probably worth saying what what Varys was very keen to do was get rid of the competent rulers of King's Landing. And you see this time and time again. I did a video on this one. He behind the scenes influenced Barristan Selmy being thrown out. He released Tyrion. Yes, I know Jaime was there, but he was the person who released Tyrion so that he could escape. He had plans for getting Ned Stark out and going up to the Wall. He eliminated Kevin at the very last chapter that we have. He killed Kevin because and he even says, he apologizes to him. He says, "I'm sorry, it's not personal. You were just being a bit too good at your job." He even, and every time I go back to it, it strikes me even more. He sends Tyrion to kill his father. I mean, he doesn't say it like that, but Tyrion's there going, "Well, how would I get to the House Chambers from here?" And Varys could have just said, "There's no time. We're going." But he doesn't. He says, "Oh, well, it's that, go up that ladder there." And he doesn't just say, "Go up that ladder there." He says, "Go up that ladder there for this many rungs, and then you turn left, and then you pass by 3 doors, and then it's just the one over there. And when you open it, and it's just like he gives him specific instructions about how to do that, knowing surely what Tyrion would do when he was confronted with his father. So Varys's focus was on eliminating the competent people running King's Landing. Sansa will very probably turn into a very competent person, but at that moment in time, she was not running King's Landing, so she was not actually a threat preventing his man from landing and getting control. Then you also had a question about the Iron Bank. Could the Iron Bank have hired a faceless man, maybe Pate, to get rid of the dragons after what Tycho said to Jon? Is this a thing the faceless men would do, kill a dragon, or find out how to? Well, thank you for the question. I did cover this one in the short form video, I think quite recently, because this is something that a while ago I did my videos about the faceless men, and I asked the question, why was Jack in Old Town? Because he is. We get the physical description of him, which is exactly the same as the physical description of what Jaqen turned into when Arya said goodbye to him. He appears down in Old Town and then takes on the appearance of Pate. And so why Pate? Well, because Pate has access to a key which allows you access to the secret parts of the Citadel, which is where the deep lore and hidden books are. Why do they want to do that? Well, it could be just to kill someone, but perhaps it's to get some knowledge from there that they might be needing for other things. And we have heard of some books there, including The Death of Dragons. Now, this kind of left me with a slight uncertainty for a long time, because it's like, well, I get that. Is this because the faceless men, they want to get rid of the undead because the undead they would be an abomination to their religion because all men must die, and the undead are like not obeying that. So I get that, but the dragons just bring death, so why get rid of them? But then I focused in on exactly what you said here, because of what Tycho said to Jon. And this is Tycho Nestoris, who is the representative of the Iron Bank. And the situation is that he's at the wall, and he's at the wall because he wants to pitch this idea to Stannis. Hey, we'll lend you a whole load of money if you go and take on Cersei, and you become king, and then you take on all of the crown debt as well. How's about that for a deal? So he gets to the wall because he hears that's where Stannis is. Stannis has moved on by then, but Jon's there. And Jon, as Lord Commander, he thinks to himself, well, we could do with a little bit of money as well, actually. We're going to have a long winter, and we need some provisions in. And we probably need a few boats. So let's see whether I'll get a small loan for the Night's Watch while he's here. And so they have a negotiation session, which seems very convivial. They kind of move through and reach an agreement. And they do this over a couple of glasses of wine. It seems very nice, very positive interaction. And then we get this, where Tycho Nestoris sort of says, the conversation's rambled around a bit. He says, "One hears queer talk of dragons," and then Jon has a little a joke. It's not a good joke, but it's like just like a little light-hearted comment. Says, "Oh, would that we had one here. A dragon might warm things up a bit." And then Tycho suddenly gets all serious and says, my lord jests. You will forgive me if I do not laugh. We Bravosi are descended from those who fled Valyria and the wrath of its dragon lords. We do not jape of dragons." No, I suppose not, thinks Jon. And then he thinks he has to apologize. He says, "My apologies, Lord Tycho." And he's like, "It's okay, don't worry." But it's like, after having this very pleasant chat, Jon makes this rather weak joke about, "Oh, it'd be good to have a dragon here." And then Tycho says, "No, we don't joke about that." And that's the kind of thing that makes you go, "Ah, so they really don't like dragons." And the Iron Bank and the Faceless Men work so closely together. What if the Iron Bank have heard these rumors, as we know they have? They've heard these rumors of dragons, and then they send um, Jaqen off down to Old Town to find out how to kill a dragon. That ties in for me. That just kind of works. Okay. Callie Summers saying, "Hi, Robert. I hope you're well." I am. Thank you. I have a couple of Palantiri questions and Dragonbinder adjacent theories. So let's start with Lord of the Rings. Why would the stewards of Gondor mostly stop using the Minas Tirith stone just because Sauron had the Ithil stone? If you need to be aligned with another stone to establish a connection, would it not be safe to look west or south? Assuming the answer is that it's not really a secure encrypted laser-like connection, might Denethor at least have ever picked up some of Saruman's searching and or communication with Sauron? It might even have increased his distrust of wizards, thinking that Gandalf was conspiring with Saruman. This is just hypothetical theorizing, but what do you think would have happened if Aragorn thought to try communicating with Denethor using the Orthanc stone? He might not be enthusiastic about Aragorn taking the high throne, but he probably would have believed Aragorn wasn't attacking the city. Okay, so the I mean, there's a lot of layers here. So the stone, the Minas Tirith Palantir, had been largely left alone for a long time by the stewards. Denethor was the first for a little while to take it on and use it. He was strong of mind, we're told, and so he used it to sort of see what was going on in Mordor, which is what really they were most concerned about, and Denethor became very concerned about. Might he have used that to spy on Saruman? I mean, potentially, but his focus, you know what Denethor became like. His focus was very, very much on Mordor. As for Aragorn, one of the things about, well, two things about the Orthanc Stone is that it was, and all of the different, we didn't really think of it, but each Palantiri was slightly different. And the Orthanc Stone, although, yes, it's a mighty and powerful object, it wasn't as easily guided as the others. You could only sort of see some things far off and like a bit muddied. So Saruman did manage to use it to connect in with Sauron, but he clearly couldn't manage to use it to look at the Pelennor fields and work out exactly where the One Ring was, because you could look. They didn't show this really on the TV show, but you could look back in time with it as well. With the Palantir, if you're looking through it, you can. If you've got enough control over it, you can look back in time about what happens in a certain place. Incredibly powerful object. So that's the first point. Aragorn, this was his first time using it. The idea that he could like use it to do a whole load of different things, no. And secondly, it's quite a chunky thing, so he couldn't really carry it around with him. And I think we sometimes forget quite how quickly things moved then. Aragorn looked in the Orthanc stone and was gone the next day. He couldn't take it with him. He's left it. So he did the thing that he needed to do with it, and then he moved on. So those, I think, are the two sort of key things as to why Aragorn didn't use it. And Andrew Kay saying that the Iron Bank must have missed the rumours about the slave liberating aspect with Dany. Yes, but we do, I think, have to remember the slowness of communication. So whereas when you get at the end of a storm of swords, you get Jaqen saying, I'm now going to go somewhere else and I'm going to look like this. At that point, were they aware of Dany with all of her slave liberation things? Perhaps not 100%, because everything, the information that the rumours had to travel for a very long way away. They will have heard from her time in Karth, dragons. That's the thing. Will be okay. We've got dragons. We've got somebody currently over in Westeros. Let's get him to go and try and find out some more information about how to kill dragons. At some point, they will get the extra information about what Dany is up. In fact, they probably already have it now, but that doesn't affect the initial commission to go off and try to find out how to kill dragons. I suspect that they will then have to make a decision. Dragons are back. We hate dragons. But this person seems to be freeing slaves. We like that. That's a judgment call that they will need to make at some point. But the timing of that initial move makes sense for we don't know about this. We'll just send them off just in case. Let's go to Kelly, some of the question about Dragonbinder, wondering if this is a way to hack or steal a bound dragon. It would explain why the Targaryens didn't bring a horn with them, since once they had all the remaining dragons and eggs, they wouldn't want any surviving horns, and they would rarely talk about it as more than a family rumor. Yeah, so Dragonbinder is interesting. Assuming this does, and we've no reason to doubt it, assuming this does something like what it says on the side, which is you blow it or have someone else blow it, and then you can control a dragon. Assuming that's the case, you have to say, well, what was this used for? Because we've already got this kind of dragon bonding idea between Targaryens, Valyrians, and dragons. So why do we need a dragon horn that does more? Well, Dany, when she's riding Drogon, seems not to be able to control him. And she thinks to herself, oh, I'm sure the Valyrians used to have horns that could allow them to control dragons. So that's the sort of the hint we have that this is something to do with controlling dragons. I do wonder whether this is to do with the initial bonding of like a bloodline to some dragons. It's entirely possible. The hijacking thing, it certainly makes sense. I mean, I do like the train of thought that the Targaryens will have taken everything with them across from Valyria, and yet we get no. And if dragon horns were that central to how you control a dragon, then surely they'd have brought them with them if they had one. And is this just? I mean, it makes sense to me that they might have said, okay, we can bond with dragons. We don't need these dragon horns. The dragon horns potentially could be blown by other people, allowing them to grab and hold one of these dragons in the same way that Euron is seemingly trying to grab from afar one of Dany's dragons. It makes sense. Yeah, they might have destroyed them. That certainly does explain why there are no dragon horns that Targaryens seem to have kept with them. The other idea is this idea that maybe they were just for the initial bonding and of a family line and some dragons. Martin S. Is the Ithil stone buried under the rubble of Barad-dûr in the Fourth Age, or did it break with the collapse of the Dark Tower? Okay, so this is the stone that Sauron was using, the Palantir that Sauron was using, that he took to Barad-dûr and was using from there. Did it break? I mean, Tolkien doesn't tell us, but we certainly know of the other ones. Then three have been sort of lost at the bottom of the sea, basically, or at the bottom of a very deep river. And I think the idea is that this is the same. It's gone. It's been buried. Whether that actually would destroy it, we don't know what it takes to destroy a Palantir, but it is now out of reach and gone. Madeline Tyrell Dane saying, "Hi Robert, good morning from Australia." Well, good morning to you too. What do you think will happen to Melisandre's character in The Winds of Winter and beyond? Will her role differ from how it was on the show? Will she die in the same way? Will we get more Melisandre POVs? Well, yes to POVs, simply because we need to hear the story of what happens at the Wall. What George R. R. Martin tends to do is introduce POV characters when there's a bit of story he needs to tell, and the POV characters who might be able to tell that story are not there for whatever reason. For example, Daenerys flew off at the end of A Dance with Dragons, but he still wants us to see what's going on in Meereen, so he introduces Sir Barristan as a POV character. He'd been around for a little while before that without being a POV character. He becomes a POV character when Dany goes away because we want to see what's going on there. And I think this is the same thing that's happening with Melisandre, is that we had previously been seeing what was going on at the Wall through Jon and through Sam, and Sam's gone away. Davos is up in the north, but nowhere near there. Theon isn't near there. Ash is not near there. So he needs a character. Jon's just died. He needs a character through whose eyes we can see what's happening at the Wall. That's why he's introduced Melisandre. So I think we will get more Melisandre characters because he has introduced her for this very reason. Which I think is great. We should learn so much more about her through those chapters. As for what will happen to her, will it differ from the show? Will she die in the same way? I mean, I tend to the view that she will shift her attention from Stannis being Azor Ahai to Jon. I think that when she sees him coming back to life, perhaps in the flames, perhaps even they will try and burn his body with his sword there, and he will come out from the flames with his sword, which is all fiery from the flames. The imagery would be, it would blow her mind. So I could see then that she might suddenly start reassessing all of these things. When she was looking for Azor Ahai and all she saw was snow, she suddenly thinks, now I get it. It's because Jon Snow is actually Azor Ahai. I got it wrong the first time. I'm right now. I could certainly see her shifting her support over to Jon. Will her role sort of beyond that be the same? Well, she's not going to be the one saying something to Arya so that Arya can go and kill the Night King. That bit is not going to happen, but she is going to be playing a significant role. What I think is the intriguing part is she is basically a rogue priestess. She went off against or certainly without the direct instructions of the High Command of the Faith of R'hllor. And they, independent of her, have now decided that Dany is Azor Ahai reborn. So if she comes into contact with them, she's going to be there going, "No, I know who the person is. It's over here." And they're going to be, "No, you're wrong. It's this person over here." Is she going to carry on being independent, or is she going to try and engage with them? Because they will be wanting the same thing, but they'll be backing different people. They will be both sides, they'll be wanting to be fighting the others, but they'll have different ideas on who Azor Ahai Reborn is. Okay, Corvus Corax. Do we know if wildfire can burn a dragon? And who in King's Landing knows about the caches of it? Um, well, no, we don't know about wildfire and dragons. We know the line "fire cannot kill a dragon," which is not just from the show. Danny thinks that. Um, but I think the clear idea is that probably no. Dragonfire is hotter, and so probably wildfire, or at least dragonfire from older dragons, is hotter. About the wildfire caches, there's two ways. I've got a video about this which will come out at some point soon about the potential burning of King's Landing. You have to remember there's a couple of iterations of wildfire caches. The Mad King put caches of wildfire dotted throughout King's Landing. And Jaime, when foiling that plot, he didn't just, we sometimes get the idea from the TV show, he just killed the Mad King. That's it. No, he didn't. He killed the Mad King. He hunted down the pyromancers who were a part of this as well. He killed them, but extracted from them information about where these wildfire caches were. We don't know exactly how he did, but he dealt with them in some way. And um, we also know that he didn't get all of them. There, we get a couple of reports of, oh, we found some lying around. They were over there. So there are some caches of wildfire still dotted around, and nobody knows where they are. Because the people who did know where they are, Jaime killed, and Jaime didn't know where they all were. But then, secondly, there's another lot that Cersei has been ordering made, basically, and she will know where those are. So there's two types, two iterations of production of wildfire. The danger comes is the longer you leave wildfire, the more volatile it becomes. So a little fire in one place, if it's too near where there's a hidden cache of wildfire, boom, that wildfire will go up. Ali Summers, why was the sea okay for a Silmaril and not the ring? If you're talking about why not throw the ring into the sea, I did a whole video on that one. Feel free to check that out. So the Silmaril, a Silmaril and the One Ring are fundamentally different things. The One Ring, the risk would be that the One Ring would make its way back. It would get swallowed up by a sea creature. It would get washed onto the land at some point. It wanted to return to. So, I mean, this is a film thing, but there's the clear element of this. It was always wanting and straining and trying to get back to Sauron. What we do know is that it could expand and contract on somebody's finger, and that's how it could fall off of someone's finger. It could Isildur could lose it because they didn't want the ring did not want to be on Isildur's finger anymore. Gollum lost it because it didn't want to be with Gollum anymore. So it can, in small ways, interact with its physical environment and get itself back. So if it's and Gandalf basically sort of says this, yes, maybe you could for 1,000 years, 2,000, 5,000 years, but it might make its way back. The Silmaril, if it did emerge back, firstly, that doesn't have the same kind of function. But secondly, if it did make its way back, I mean, it's not the end of the world. I mean, yes, lots of people coveted it, but inside it was actually a holy light. It wasn't an evil object in and of itself. It had holy light within it, and if you were not a holy person, effectively, then it would burn your hands if you held it. So it's that this is actually a good object. It's just that surrounding it is a whole load of evil stuff. So they're fundamentally different things. And Steve the O saying, good evening, hope all is well. Do you think that Barristan and Jaime's paths may cross? Is there potential for them to confront the oath that Jaime broke versus the cost of doing nothing by Selmy? Probably not needed, but I'm sure with their white cloaks on, it would be a great debate. Yeah, I agree. It would be a great debate. Not for the foreseeable future, though, simply because of where they're at. So Barristan's all the way over in Marine. He's not going to be arriving in Westeros at least until the end of the next book. And Jaime is probably not going to be there defending King's Landing at that point. So if they did meet, it would be a book and a half away. And Jaime would have to, I mean, whether he'd even want to talk to him about it, because he knows that Varys and Selmy would judge him, and he would have to explain exactly what he was doing. So, second question was, what is Littlefinger doing with those tapestries? Is there some relevance? And then you sort of said, a Song of Ice and Fire sparked a curiosity in European medieval history, and I came across the Bayeux tapestry, which I guess inspired the opening of House of Dragon Season 2 theme. Well, yeah, absolutely it is. And it's coming back on loan to England for the first time in 900 years, which is great. For those who don't know the Bayeux Tapestry, this is a tapestry, or I think might technically be an embroidery, but it's incredibly long, and it just tells the story of the Norman invasion of England back in 1066, the build up to it, and all the rest of it. So it's a wonderful historical document and showing how past generations, without writing the story down, preserved their version of history. And yes, I think that was the inspiration for the intro sequence for House of the Dragon Season 2. But tapestries, Littlefinger, it's easy to miss this, but there were Robert Baratheon loved his hunting tapestries, and he had tapestries up in the Red Keep. When Joffrey took over, he had them taken down and rolled up and just thrown somewhere down in the basement of the Red Keep. Littlefinger rescued them and gave them to Nestor Royce, who we see in one of the later chapters very proudly showing off. These used to belong to a king, don't you know? That kind of thing. Now, what's going on there? I have heard some theories that perhaps Littlefinger was using this as an opportunity to smuggle other things out. Maybe people, you could roll them up inside the tapestries, and I know that there are some good people who believe those things. That may be true, but I don't think we've got any evidence for it, and I don't think it's necessary for us to understand why Littlefinger would do this. It's been very clear from the response that Nestor Royce loves it as a gift, and this has helped win him over for Littlefinger. And Littlefinger is trying one by one to win over allies in the Vale. And if he's figured out a way to do that with Nestor Royce, great. So that I think is, we can sometimes read extra layers into something that doesn't need it. There might be extra layers, but we don't know about them yet, and we don't need any for that to actually make sense. Do you think that George R. R. Martin is writing Fire and Blood 2 and possibly a Duncan Egg as he writes The Winds of Winter? I get the feeling that Fire and Blood helps George set the history for many historic plots which may surface, and building the world may help The Winds of Winter. Well, he is definitely doing at least a little bit of writing on Fire and Blood Part 2, which he's calling Blood and Fire. And we know this because in one of his blog posts, when he was, I do often feel a little bit sorry for him when he feels he has to give these. I have been doing writing, and then we read far too much into the exact words that he uses to describe what sort of writing he's been doing. But he said he's written a few pages of Blood and Fire. Now, yes, I think he certainly found Fire and Blood relatively easy to write, and I think he enjoyed it. I think the writing style made it a lot easier because he didn't have to have hard and fast answers for everything because of the way it was written. If you remember reading Fire and Blood, the amount of times it's like, and this source says that such and such a thing happened, but this source says such and such a thing happened. I think maybe it was that, but we don't know. Let's move on. And that there's a lot of that. So he doesn't have to tie down absolutely everything. He can leave some things quite uncertain. And I think he enjoys and appreciates that. And yes, I think that having that history set out certainly will help him with writing the other things. Duncan Egg, I've not heard him say that he is writing them. I touched on this a little bit earlier, but it wouldn't surprise me if he feels an urge to do so when we get past season 2 of Duncan Egg. Catherine Fursith saying, "Hi Robert, it has struck me how literally George R. R. Martin sometimes tells us the truths or gives us hints in the text. On a reread of book 1, in one of the Jon chapters, right after they discovered the 2 dead Night's Watchmen who went missing, Jon has his Winterfell crypt dream again. It says, last night he had dreamt the Winterfell dream again. He was wandering the empty castle, searching for his father, descending into the crypts. Only this time, the dream had gone further than before. In the dark, he'd heard the scrape of stone on stone. When he turned, he saw that the vaults were opening one after the other. As the dead kings came stumbling from their cold black graves, Jon had woken in pitch dark, his heart hammering. I had completely forgotten that the dreams actually involved vaults opening and dead kings emerging. There in black and white, support for some form of the statues will come alive theory. And the same goes for the line, Ned Stark kept his vows, when the text is going on about Robert having many women. So neat. Do you have any other examples where hints are so clearly spelled out? Yeah, so I'll just give you my favourite. This was my last, incidentally, this is my last question from my patrons. So if you've got any more questions, now is a good time to drop them into the chat. So my favourite example of when George R. R. Martin is very literal. I've already mentioned the snow one with Melisandre when she sees I see in the flames for Azor Ahai, and all I see is snow. And it's like Jon Snow. But there's another example all the way back in book 1 where Ned and King Robert are they're having a little bit of a chat with each other, and Ned says kings are a rare sight in the north, because Robert's like saying, hey, everyone's looking at me, what's going on? And Ned says kings are a rare sight in the north, and then Robert snorted, more likely they were hiding under the snow. Snow, Ned. Which is like, yeah, so you're saying that Jon here is a king. Snow. So sometimes he's very on the nose with these kind of things, and he particularly loves using the word snow in this kind of context. Okay, let's have a quick flick through the chat. Buttoned up reader saying, funnily enough, the Normans were just Vikings, so it was really a second Viking invasion. Poor Harold had to beat one group of Vikings and then lose to the second. Yeah, absolutely. So the Normans, in case you missed this, the Normans, they were in Normandy for just, I think, a couple of generations. The Vikings went all over Europe. Andrew Kay saying George R. Martin had more to draw from and borrow for Fire and Blood Part 1, the World Book and various novellas, but there's still some to use for Part 2, but I think that will require more effort next installment. I agree, yes. So he had to write Part 1, he had 3 novellas, The Princess and the Queen, the Sons of the Dragon, and the one about Daemon Targaryen. So it's getting late. My memory goes. But he had 3 novellas that he'd written. So he could use those as sort of the foundation for, and I mean, he didn't exactly cut and paste across, but that was basically the idea. They sort of formed the basis of the world of Ice and Fire, which formed the basis of Fire and Blood. So he hasn't got that for this second part, but he will be moving more and more into the parts where he will already have done some thinking. So, for example, if he's moving into the Blackfire rebellions, then he's already been doing the thinking via Dunk and Egg. So, yes, there's less there to give him a start, but he's probably done a bit more thinking about it all. Eflin T, will the long night fall in Essos 2 or just in the north? Well, last time it fell in Essos 2. I think the working assumption is that the long night may start in the north of Westeros, but would move south. Callie Summers, could Euron have obtained Dragonbinder in a Shy rather than Valyria? Going with my theory from before, it could be related to the Shadowbinding magic and more plausible to have visited. Yes, we shouldn't. Rogue Prince, thank you very much, Andrew K. Yeah, we shouldn't take Euron at his word. We've got no witnesses that he did go to Valyria, and everything we've heard about Valyria is that anyone who goes there does not return. So I think we can be skeptical about whether he did actually go there. But going to a Shy and collecting a dragon horn is still pretty impressive. NC Caretto saying, do you think Mel is actually seeing Jon or literally Snow? Well, this is one of those fun ones where George R. Martin is playing with us, because we actually see a couple of conversations from her saying similar things from two perspectives, from hers and from other people. I think it was from Sam's perspective. And when we get it from his perspective, it might have been Jon's. She hears Snow. He hears Snow with a lowercase s, because that's what they hear, and just assume it means Snow. But when it's her, it's a capitalized S, which implies it's Jon Snow. So she seems to be seeing Jon Snow, but she has not communicated that to anyone else. They just heard Snow with a lowercase. Okay, so let's. I think with that. Oh goodness me, it's been quite a long one again. These open Q&A often do go on for quite some time. Right, so we've got next week. I think I shall probably do another pre-recorded live stream. So patrons, I will probably let you know about that. Ask for any questions. I might do R plus L equals J, which is a subject that I'm sure has been done to death, but I just want to get down all of the evidence on this one. So I think probably that's what's going to be next week. Over on the main channel, I've got quite a few new videos coming up. I can't even remember what I've got coming out tomorrow. Let's hope it's a good one. In Deep Sleep, I'm starting to put videos back up there again. Slightly different style. Let me know what you think about that. And over on the Well-Told Tale, then I'm working my way through the War of the Worlds. So all of those things are going on. If you are watching this back a little, so thank yous first. Moderators, you're amazing. You've been doing this for 3.5 hours. I hugely appreciate it. If everyone, before you go, you could send a little bit of love to the moderators, I would hugely appreciate it. And patrons, thank you as well. Appearing somewhere around here, if you're watching this back a little bit later, will be a link to other live streams that I've done. Appearing somewhere around here will be a link to Patreon, which is the best way to support this channel if you so wish. I think that is all for this time. I will be back this time next week. Take care, everyone. I will see you again soon.